Chapter 189 Flame Salamander's Blue Flame. A current of practically burning lava rapidly flowed from his hands into his meridians. Boom! When that current entered his meridians, it was like salt water had met fresh water, causing violent surges that filled him with pain. He continued to control the speed at which the energy was flowing into him. If he let that terrifying energy directly flood into his body, his meridians would immediately burst. His Feng Fu star was quickly circulating, and his enormous spiritual qi was pouring out. It controlled the speed at which the Niden's energy flowed into his body. He needed to let his meridians gradually become accustomed to that violent heat. The Niden was the spot where all the flame salamander's energy had been stored over its lifetime. If the Niden were to explode, that terrifying energy would be able to immediately exterminate several third-rank magical beasts. And despite his slow absorption speed, Long Chen still found the pain difficult to endure. That terrifying heat was constantly roasting his meridians. There was also a violent qi that was constantly circulating around. That qi possessed an instinctual destructive will that wanted to burn everything. It was good that Long Chen had made enough preparations. With the fire-gathering pill, he had a layer of protection over his meridians that prevented that energy from harming them. He also celebrated that he had just advanced to the 7th heaven stage, allowing his meridians to grow even stronger. Otherwise, even with the fire-gathering pill's protection, he might have already failed. All things were difficult at the start, but once you managed to get past the beginning, the rest would be comparatively easier. Long Chen continued to absorb the Niden's energy. There was an incredible amount of energy within it, and Long Chen didn't dare increase his absorption speed, and so it took a full 6 hours for him to completely absorb it. By the time all that energy was absorbed, the original beast flame inside the Niden had also disappeared. All that energy that had been within the Niden was now within Long Chen's meridians. In reality, that energy was the flame salamander's core flame. The flame salamander was incredibly strong, most likely even beyond Long Chen's imagination. If the flame salamander hadn't been weakened by birth that time, he really would have been screwed. Now the flame salamander's core flame was surging within Long Chen's meridians. Long Chen's spiritual strength slowly erased its berserk nature. It was lucky that the flame salamander's core flame didn't actually have any consciousness. By using a gentle, stealthy method, he managed to easily erase that destructive will without worrying about a backlash. Once the core flames had been erased, Long Chen took a deep breath. Now was the real test. Condense. Energy surged out of his Feng Fu star, entering into the furthest reaches of his meridians and driving the beast flame to the center. Having lost its will, the beast flame followed his energy surging towards his dantian. Boom! All the scattered beast flame collided together. Long Chen coughed up blood, his face completely pale. Damn, I failed. I just knew my luck was crap. Long Chen gasped for breath. That attempt just now had completely exhausted him. Unfortunately, he had failed to accomplish what he had wanted. Although I failed, I saw a flicker of the rune. That means there's still a chance. Long Chen had wanted to use a fierce collision of the beast flame to obtain the flame salamander's own rune. As a fire attribute magical beast whose beast flame was ranked 97th on the beast flame rankings, it possessed its own bloodline inheritance. Such a magical beast's Niden contained its runic power. But that kind of rune was unusable by humans. Long Chen was hoping to have the beast flame collide within his body. During that chaotic explosion, he would be able to grab onto the runic power. That was only possible because the Niden he had managed to obtain had barely lost any of its energy back then. As long as Long Chen caused its energy to erupt out, he was able to see that rune. The fire-gathering pill he had consumed didn't just have the purpose of protecting his meridians. Its main ability was to gather every single bit of flame energy together. If others did this, their dantian would explode. But Long Chen didn't have to worry about that since his dantian was empty. Again. Boom. 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 He coughed up blood time after time. He felt that his body was about to collapse. But there was one thing that allowed him to continue. That was because every time he collided the beast flame, he saw the rune becoming clearer and clearer. However, that rune would only appear for the briefest instance. That moment wasn't long enough for him to take control of it. Boom! Wait a sec, I failed again. With another explosion, the rune appeared again, this time extremely clearly. Long Chen attempted to use his spiritual strength to link up to that rune, but the flame energy scattered too quickly, causing the rune to also disappear. Ugh, I need a break. Long Chen was absolutely exhausted. Coughing up mouthfuls of blood wasn't something to worry about with his powerful physical body, but driving the flame into huge collisions greatly exhausted his spiritual strength. That was especially true at the moment of collision. He would use 10 times the spiritual strength in an attempt to link up to that rune when it appeared. He had already attempted this over 10 times. Even though his body was able to continue, his spirit was not. He had a splitting headache now. Quickly consuming a spirit-stabilizing pill, he focused on recovering his spiritual energy. 2 hours later, at least part of his spiritual strength had recovered. This time I'll definitely succeed. Although each time he had failed, he had accumulated more and more experience. He was much more sure of himself than at the beginning. Once more driving the scattered beast flame in his meridians towards his dantian. This time he used several times more intensity than before. Boom! When the beast flame collided inside his dantian, terrifying energy exploded out. A rune immediately appeared within that fierce blaze. Quick, quick, get over here. But suddenly his mind shook. A strange fluctuation came from his spirit. An imprint appeared in the deepest part of his soul. I succeeded? Long Chen opened his eyes. Extending his hand, a blue flame rose. Although it was only just a foot long, that terrifying heat caused all the surrounding grass 3 meters around him to dry up. Long Chen slowly closed his eyes. Taking a deep breath, a fluctuation came from the depths of his spirit. He once more opened his eyes. Boom! The flame in his hand pulsed and a clear rune appeared in the flame. When that rune appeared, the surrounding grass immediately became ashes. Everything around him in an area of dozens of meters was now charred black. Haha, I succeeded. The world suddenly spun around him. Exhaustion battered him, and he immediately fainted. When he once more woke up, he was lying in bed. You've finally woken up. What the hell were you doing? You were covered in black ashes when I found you. Tang Wan'er walked over with a wet towel. Hee hee, I was doing a grand experiment. Long Chen was extremely pleased. You almost burnt yourself to death. Don't tell me you were experimenting with barbecue? Laughed Tang Wan'er, moving to wipe his face. Long Chen was given a fright and hastily took the towel. I think I'll do that myself. I really would be embarrassed to trouble the faction leader with such a thing. Tang Wan'er reddened slightly. She sniffed. You also get embarrassed? When we carried you back, you were like a little beggar. If it weren't for both me and Sister Qingyu, do you think you would be so clean? Long Chen was startled, realizing his clothes had been changed. He hastily checked his clothes, immediately feeling relief when he saw his original clothes were just underneath. Scoundrel, what's with that expression? Tang Wan'er gave his elbow a pinch. His expression really was annoying. What? You're bullying Long Chen again. At this time Qingyu walked over. She had just happened to see the scene of Long Chen grimacing in pain. Sister Qingyu, why do you always take his side? He's clearly the one bullying me. Tang Wan'er felt somewhat wronged. She also sighed inside. Why was this scoundrel's luck always so good? Whenever she got the advantage, Qingyu would always immediately appear. Long Chen laughed mischievously. Sister Qingyu, you've misunderstood. I was just playing a joke with Wan. Tang Wan'er glanced at Long Chen with some relief. At least this brat knew how to talk. Right, what time is it? It's not what time, but what day. You were asleep for 2 days. It's the afternoon of the 3rd day, answered Tang Wan'er. What? I slept for 2 days? Long Chen was shocked. He hastily leapt out of bed. Wan'er and Sister Qingyu, close the door and activate the Spirit Stone formation to the max. What are you planning on doing? Tang Wanner said blankly. Don't ask, just do it. Long Chen walked into the lounge and arranged all the medicinal ingredients he had bought as well as his pill furnace. Tang Wanner and Qing Yu followed Long Chen's instructions, closing the stone door and activating the spirit stone formation to the max. Normally the door was only kept open when not cultivating in order to prevent wastage. The spirit stone formation was also normally kept unactivated. That was to prolong the lifespan of the spirit stones. If their room's spirit stone formation was activated to the maximum level, the 8 spirit stones would only have enough energy to last 6 hours. If they calculated it like that, Tang Wanner only had enough spirit stones for half a month's usage, and so they saved as much of it as possible. When they activated the spirit stone formation, the enormous spiritual qi from the spirit stones began to be quickly released. The entire immortal cave was immediately filled with dense spiritual qi. Long Chen, are you planning on refining pills? Qing Yu was a bit puzzled. Yup. Long Chen nodded as he confirmed all the medicinal ingredients. He ordered the medicinal ingredients into a set sequence. That way it would be more convenient while he refined and he wouldn't have to be worried about grabbing the wrong medicinal ingredient. Then should we leave? Probingly asked Tang Wan. Although she didn't know alchemy, all the alchemists she knew never allowed anyone disturb them while refining. Nope. Actually, I'll need your help in a bit, laughed Long Chen. After saying that, he extended his hand. A blue flame rose from his palm, lighting up the entire immortal cave. It was time to test his harvest. He hoped it wouldn't disappoint him. Chapter 190 Refining Muscle Firming Pills. When the blue flame rose from Long Chen's palm, the entire immortal cave was lit up gorgeously and warmly. What a beautiful flame! Tang Wanner was bewitched by that flame. That was the first time she had ever seen such a beautiful flame. It looked just like a ball of blazing water. Long Chen smiled slightly. After he had gained control over the beast flame's rune, his control over it had risen greatly. He could control it smoothly with just a thought and wouldn't need to use too much spiritual strength. That previous flame, leopard beast flame he had previously used, required him to use his spiritual strength to keep it suppressed. It was like a disobedient animal. If he didn't keep it suppressed, it would attack him. But now that he controlled his new beast flame's rune, the beast flame had now essentially accepted Long Chen as its master and wouldn't resist him at all. As for his control over the power and rhythm of the flame, naturally it was now completely smooth and effortless. Long Chen even praised himself a bit inside. This kind of crazy accomplishment was something only a genius could have thought of. If that crazy idea paid off, then it made that person a genius. But if they failed, then they would be called madmen. So in this world, geniuses and madmen were all cut from the same cloth. They were only differentiated by their luck. Tang Wanner and Qing Yu were quietly watching. This was the first time they had ever seen someone refine pills. That was because alchemists didn't like to have others around them when refining. One reason was because they were afraid of being disturbed, but the other was because they were afraid of others secretly learning their techniques. Long Chen, of course, didn't care about that last one in the slightest. He was completely focused, slowly warming the furnace. That was an extremely fundamental step. If the furnace wasn't gradually heated up, at the final moment there was the danger of a furnace explosion. Heating it up first would also extend the pill furnace's lifespan. Once the pill furnace's temperature rose to the right level, Long Chen began to throw in the medicinal pills. Controlling the flame, he refined out their pure essence. This part was very dependent on skill. The strength of the flame had to be just right, and the alchemist also had to be experienced and knowledgeable about the heat required by the medicinal ingredients. If the flame was too weak, it would require a longer time to refine. But more importantly, part of the essence would be lost due to that extended time. And of course, if the flame was too strong and surpassed the medicinal ingredients' heat limit, it would immediately turn to ashes and your work would have been for nothing. But all that was nothing to Long Chen, who possessed a pill god's memories. When it came to knowledge of the critical temperatures of medicinal ingredients, there was no one in this world who surpassed him. Now that he controlled the flame salamander's beast flame's rune, this blue flame was no different at all to his core flame. With his powerful spiritual strength, he could control it down to the finest detail. His refining speed was extremely fast. After refining a couple of the medicinal ingredients into powder, he told Tang Wan'er and Qing Yu to take out a clean piece of glazed paper and placed the medicinal powders on top of it. Once they cooled off, he gave them specific proportions to split them into and to them wrap them up. As they carefully followed his instructions, he refined the second set of medicinal ingredients. They had only just accomplished his task when he finished refining the second set. He had them keep this set of medicinal ingredients separate from the rest and to wrap them up as well. This repeated itself 7 times before Long Chen finished refining all the medicinal ingredients. Long Chen was still completely fine, but it was actually Tang Wan'er and Qing Yu who were sweating. That was because they were too nervous. After all, these were medicinal pills, and the slightest mistake would cause failure. And so they had to be extremely careful and meticulous. Okay, I've finished the refinement part. Now there are 7 sets of medicinal powders. Pour each set into the pill furnace in accordance to the order they were refined. As for the timing, wait for my signal. I'm going to continue, said Long Chen. Wait a moment, Long Chen, exclaimed Tang Wan'er. What? I'm too nervous, Tang Wan'er said with some embarrassment. She was afraid to make a mistake. Long Chen laughed. What are you worried about? Even if it fails, it'll be my responsibility. Just treat it as how you played house as a child. Hearing Long Chen laugh, Tang Wan'er relaxed quite a bit. Looking at the small ball of medicine in her hand, she saw it really was just like a small ball of sand she used to play with. A flame burst into existence in his hand. Terrifying heat soared out as he placed it into his pill furnace. I'm starting. Release the first bundle. Tang Wan'er nodded and carefully poured the medicinal powders into the pill furnace. As Long Chen's flame energy circulated, those powders began to coalesce, becoming a whole, liquid entity. It was extremely mystical. What she didn't know was that those powders weren't really powders, but the essences of the medicinal ingredients. Long Chen was entirely focused on the pill furnace. He was extremely solemn. This was the first time he attempted refining a third-tier medicinal pill. Although he knew the pill formula, he had no experience in it. He couldn't be the slightest bit careless. Even stronger pill cultivators couldn't keep a 100% success rate, let alone Long Chen who was refining it for the first time. Looking at the completely focused Long Chen, Tang Wan'er was a bit bewitched. This Long Chen was exceptionally attractive. He was much more reliable and steady than he was normally when he was a mischievous rascal. Next. Long Chen's light voice gave Tang Wan'er a fright. Her mind had wandered away. Luckily there was Qing Yu to the side who was prepared. She quickly released the second set of medicinal powders into the pill furnace. Tang Wan'er blushed, looking at Qing Yu apologetically. But Qing Yu only winked at her without the slightest bit of rebuke. Now her face turned even redder. Hastily dispelling her distracting thoughts, she focused completely on Long Chen's pill furnace, not daring to even look at Long Chen's face. The main reason Long Chen had had Tang Wan'er and Qing Yu remain behind was because he wanted to focus completely on controlling his flame and keeping track of the changes in the medicinal powders. If he had to place the medicinal ingredients himself, that would split his attention. While concocting medicinal pills, the slightest mistake could result in failure. This medicinal pill was something that concerned the fate of the entire faction. He definitely couldn't make a mistake. He had used the faction's points for his own use, which he was definitely apologetic for. He had to succeed in his refinement. Time passed by unconsciously. 2 hours later, all 7 sets of medicinal powders had been thrown into the pill furnace. Long Chen had already sealed the furnace and begun increasing the flame's strength. The blue flame twisted and danced, a faintly discernible rune within it. The room's temperature began to quickly rise. Tang Wan'er and Qing Yu seemed to not feel that terrifying heat, looking at the blue flame seedling in Long Chen's hands with shock. Rune! Tang Wan'er was the most shocked. Previously she had let Long Chen examine her own rune, and she had also seen him attempt to summon out his own rune. Unfortunately he had failed. At that time she had thought Long Chen was just trying out a crazy idea. He really was a madman. Without a bloodline inheritance, how could he possibly condense a rune? But now the pill flame in his hand had changed color and a rune had appeared in it. Although that rune wasn't very clear, she could clearly sense the runic power. As someone who also possessed her own runic power, Tang Wan'er knew that it wasn't clear because Long Chen wasn't activating the rune to its full strength, not that he didn't have enough control over it. And it was precisely because she understood that she was so shocked. She practically couldn't believe it. She didn't seem to recall anyone in history ever having done as he had. How is it? Don't you think the taste would be pretty good if I used such a flame to cook fish? Although Long Chen was chatting lightly, he was clearly extremely pleased with himself. Where did you get this flame? Asked Tang Wan. I stole it. Long Chen knew that the situation within the pill furnace had already stabilized. He no longer needed to focus so intensely on it. Tang Wan'er stared at him. She knew this fellow barely said one or two truths in his nonsense. But she also knew it wasn't necessary for her to get to the bottom of this. After all, powerful techniques were the life-preserving measures of cultivators. Cultivators wouldn't just randomly demand techniques from others. That was an absolute taboo. He knew she had some apprehensions about this flame, and so he was just about to tell her where he had obtained this beast flame when his furnace began to shake intensely. The pills are about to be condensed. Long Chen slowly increased his flame strength, and his right hand covered the lid. Boom boom boom. Terrifying energy circulated within the pill furnace. It was like there was a berserk hurricane within. This is a sign the pills are about to form. All the medicinal liquid has been concentrated together. Under the powerful urging of the flame, it will almost come to life, automatically separating into several small balls. Each small ball will crazily whirl around the pill furnace, absorbing spiritual qi from the surroundings. It will form an outer layer with all the essence collected inside. Their shapes are originally not at all completely circular, but after experiencing that crazy whirling, they end up becoming the standard pill shape. This entire process is just like the maturation of an embryo, extremely miraculous to an inconceivable level, Long Chen explained to the two of them when he saw how curious they were. Although Long Chen knew all the principles of refining pills, he still possessed a profound respect for alchemy. It was a kind of divine technique, an art that could change something trash into something miraculous. Boom! After a final intense explosion, the furnace returned to calm. Long Chen lifted the furnace lid. A dense pill fragrance filled the immortal cave. 9 pearl-like medicinal pills quietly lay within the furnace. Heavens, a pill halo. They're high-grade medicinal pills, and 5 of them, exclaimed Tang Wan. Long Chen had also not expected this. After all, this was his first attempt at this. Originally, he had been thinking that just 1 high-grade medicinal pill would have been pretty good, but there were actually 5. After just a moment, Long Chen realized that was the effect of the spirit stone formation. It appeared its effect was even greater than he had imagined. Look, Long Chen. There are 5 high-grade muscle-firming pills and the rest all have pill lines, marking them as middle grade. You really are too amazing, Long Chen. Tang Wan'er held the medicinal pills, an excited smile blooming on her face. Ugh, I really am getting rusty. I remember I could refine such medicinal pills with my eyes closed, and they were all high grade, sighed Long Chen. He shook his head dejectedly. Tang Wan'er was first startled, but then she immediately rolled her eyes, no longer bothering with Long Chen. She adoringly looked at those muscle-firming pills with delight. With that experience, Long Chen had already learned all the important moments to control his flame. The second furnace was refined much faster, requiring only just a quarter hour. What caused Tang Wan'er and Qing Yu to be stupefied was that this time light shining out this time was even stronger. The 9 pearl-like medicinal pills were actually all high-grade muscle-firming pills. When all the medicinal ingredients had been refined, Tang Wan'er simply stared at a table of over 110 muscle-firming pills. She had practically gone stupid. Long Chen had managed to refine that many medicinal pills without rest. Although he said he could easily refine at least another 10,000 of them, He directly crawled into his blankets and fell into a deep sleep. After Tang Wan'er and Qing Yu recovered from their shock, they began to distribute those high-grade muscle-firming pills down. Long Chen only woke up the next day. Looking at the jade tablet in his hand, a huge, snow-white figure appeared in his mind. It's time to open a spiritual space. Chapter 191 Spiritual Space. Once Tang Wan'er and Qing Yu distributed the muscle-firming pills, their entire faction became silent. That was because everyone had secluded themselves in their immortal caves, borrowing the muscle-firming pills' energy to quickly stabilize their realm. Only once the realm was stabilized could they continue cultivating. Only then could they keep their foundation stable. Tang Wan'er and Qing Yu had also secluded themselves in their own rooms. Since they were just stabilizing their realm, they also deactivated the spirit stone formation to avoid wastage. In their entire faction, only Long Chen didn't need to be secluded. However, he had something even more important he had to do. Right now he was in his room, his spiritual strength going through the information within the jade tablet. Damn, they're really swindlers. It's this easy? Long Chen couldn't hold back from cursing. The principle behind the opening of a spiritual space was incredibly simple. To open a spiritual space, split your spiritual strength into two opposing poles within the mind sea and open a third space between. That space was similar to a spatial ring. But every spatial ring contained a space fragment. All the space ring had to do was connect to that space fragment. Above the land were many wandering space fragments. It was said that in ancient times, gods had fought a huge war that had smashed apart space and destroyed stars. Those space fragments were what were left behind. But as for whether or not that was true, no one knew. All people knew was that it was possible to use a special technique to merge a space fragment into a ring, forming a spatial ring that could easily store items. The only fault was that a spatial ring space was static and it was impossible to store living things. Even plants would also quickly die within it. As for this spiritual space, it was different. It was a space formed from his spiritual strength. That was a space located between his eyebrows. It was always connected to his mind. However, it couldn't store things like spatial rings. It could only contain house pets that were also connected to his mind. Frankly speaking, it was just a house pet space. That was why that senior apprentice brother had given Long Chen a warning when he had seen Long Chen wanting to buy it. Damn whoever set these prices. I curse your child's chin to be bigger than theory forehead, Long Chen muttered a curse. He also hated himself at the moment. It was something so simple. Even without this secret tome, if he had just tried it himself a bit, he probably would have had a 50% chance of succeeding. Thinking of how he had spent 63,000 points on such a simple principle, his heart dripped blood. Taking a deep breath, he put away those thoughts. He had to find a way to get more points. Regret was useless. It was more important to open his spiritual space. The mind sea was located in the space between a person's eyebrows. That was the place all a person's knowledge and memories gathered. This was the most important spot of the entire human body. The hardest part of the human head was the forehead, while the weakest spot was between the eyebrows. The bone there was extremely thin. And it was precisely because of that mental energy was emitted from that location, allowing you to be able to sense danger at the earliest moment. If a person were to stick a steel needle into any other part of the body, it wouldn't cause any damage. You might not even feel it. But if you were to pierce such a sharp object between the eyebrows, you would instinctively try to avoid it. That was the reaction of mind sea. It was the same in all people. That weak bone allowed one's mental energy to flow out without restriction. It was the most direct route. The mind sea wasn't a true acupuncture point, but a kind of generic term for spiritual strength. It could also be called the sea of consciousness. When cultivators looked inside themselves, they saw their spiritual strength surged and flowed like a sea, causing them to call it that. Within his mind sea, Long Chen gathered all his spiritual strength. As if splitting an ocean, his spiritual strength split into two spiritual dragons. Under Long Chen's urging, the two dragons roared and began to race around each other. As they did, a vacuum formed between them. As their speed increased, they became like a huge twister. The core of that twister began to change. Outside that space, spiritual strength was crazily dashing around. But inside it was completely still. As Long Chen increased the strength of his spiritual strength, the inner portion grew into a vacuum 300 meters in diameter. According to that secret tome's recordings, that vacuum was his spiritual space. As long he placed his own spiritual imprint on top of it, it would be ready to absorb his house pets that were connected to his mind. It was no wonder Long Chen would curse. This was extreme simple. The monastery really had swindled him. If someone had just given him a random hint, he wouldn't have needed to spend so many points. Since I'm opening it, I might as well make it a bit bigger. In any case, he might as well make Little Snow more comfortable inside. Long Chen continued to urge his spiritual strength, causing those two spiritual dragons to increase their speed. The spiritual space began to quickly grow. He only stopped once it was 10 times the diameter, and he only stopped because he felt he had pushed his spiritual strength to the max already. He wouldn't have been able to continue going without injuring his spirit. This 3,000 diameter spiritual space was like a transparent ball. Strange lines slowly floated down into the ball. Those lines were Long Chen's spiritual imprint. They were like a huge lock, tightly keeping the space under control. Only he would be able to open it. Those lines turned into countless spots that covered the entire ball. Long Chen realized those small spots were smaller versions of the locks. They were quickly absorbed into that ball. Once those lines completely disappeared, Long Chen found that the entire spiritual space had essentially become a part of his body, and he was able to control it with just a thought. Unfortunately, Little Snow isn't with me, sighed Long Chen. After being separated for this long, he really was missing that fellow. Little Snow had been with him since he had been the size of a palm. In order to find him, Little Snow had traveled over thousands of miles of wild terrain, almost losing his life. Their feelings for each other had long since become incomparably deep. Before entering the trial region, Long Chen had told Little Snow to go to the edge of the monastery and wait for him. Once he had made his preparations, he would go find him. Although he missed him, he knew that as a scarlet flame snow wolf that was an overlord amongst third-rank magical beasts, his power was great enough that he wouldn't encounter any real danger. Now that he had opened his spiritual space, Long Chen began to think about what to do next. Now he had already refined the beast flame. With the flame salamander's blue flame that was ranked 97th on the beast flame rankings, his combat strength had once more greatly risen. But thinking about his fight with Wu Qi, he knew that was far from enough. That was because the power of his pill flame was directly related to his cultivation base. His current pill flame had already merged into his meridians. Long Chen's spiritual qi was slowly nourishing it, increasing its power. The degree at which Long Chen's spiritual qi nourished it was over 10 times greater than what a blood condensation cultivator was normally able to accomplish. But in comparison to those who had jumped past the barrier and had reached the muscle rebirth realm, it was far too lacking. As the first major chasm of cultivators, the muscle rebirth realm was a huge barrier. After surpassing that barrier, one's spiritual qi would explosively multiply by dozens of times. Long Chen was already far behind now. Furthermore, he was also extremely sullen at the moment, as according to the monastery's rules, new disciples could not leave the monastery for the first month. So he had no way to go get Little Snow either. As for the Alioth pill's medicinal ingredients, he had seen quite a few in the Xiantian pavilion, but each of them was incredibly expensive, easily in the thousands of points, perhaps in the 10,000s. As for the Netherworld Ghost Steps, he had tricked Guisha into teaching him. HS meridians were not wide enough to train in it. As soon as he tried to use it, he would feel an intense pain from his meridians as if they might explode. That actually didn't sadden Long Chen. He was actually quite happy to have obtained such a precious treasure. It was even possible that the Netherworld Ghost Steps was an even higher class than Split the Heavens, since he was still unable to train in it. Adding on how hateful Guisha's expression had been, he knew that it was definitely a priceless treasure. He couldn't get Little Snow, he couldn't study Guisha's footwork, he couldn't buy medicinal ingredients, and he was unable to obtain third-rank magical beast blood essence. He found he really had nothing he could do anymore. But then he suddenly thought of a certain location within the Xiantian monastery. Taking a glance into the immortal cave, he saw that Tang Wan'er and Qin Yu had both drunk a cup of jade butterfly queen bee crystal and had entered their meditative states, trying to quickly stabilize their realm. Long Chen quietly left and ran to a building on the western part of the Xiantian Plaza. This building was extremely ordinary, looking like a regular house. At the top of it was a large signboard, Mission Distribution. Long Chen walked in, seeing two bored maidens chatting. The rest of the room was empty of people. "Is this the place to receive missions?" asked Long Chen, wondering if he had come to the wrong place. "Yes, this is where the monastery distributes its missions. You can choose missions here, and after accomplishing them, you can come get your points," smiled one of the maidens. Long Chen saw that both these maidens' auras were extremely powerful. They were both muscle rebirth experts, and he assumed they must be senior apprentice sisters. "Can you let me see what missions there are?" asked Long Chen. "No problem. All the missions are here." She smiled and took out a massive book, giving it to Long Chen. Opening the book, he saw there were all kinds of missions. Each mission all had a number of points beneath it, numbering from the tens to the thousands. The missions were also split into 4 levels. The 4th level of missions were extremely easy. It was basically just guarding, patrolling, and other labor. Each day you would only be able to obtain 20 to 50 points. The 3rd level's missions involved gathering medicinal ingredients, raising magical beasts, being assistants for alchemists, or perhaps forging masters. That kind of work required specific skill sets. After accomplishing these missions, you could obtain 100 to 500 points. The 2nd level's missions were mostly missions outside the sect. Perhaps it was acting as a bodyguard in the outer world, being an escort, or eliminating dangerous things. This kind of mission usually required more time, but the rewards were much more generous. They were in the thousands to the 10,000s of points. But when he reached the 1st level missions, he saw that there was nothing there. 1st level missions are very urgent and aren't available all the time. "There might not even be one in a year," explained that maiden. Long Chen nodded. He asked, "Then what kind of missions can I choose?" Since he had nothing else to do, he might as well do this. "I'm sorry, but right now you do not have the qualifications to accept any mission." Chapter 192 Faction Competition starts. "Why is that?" frowned Long Chen. "These missions can only be given out once the faction competition is over. We only allow you to see the missions and rewards to give you guys a reminder. Within the monastery, the competition is extremely intense. If you want to obtain more resources than others, you'll need to put out 100% of your effort. The faction competition is a fight over the mission priorities. You'll only receive missions in accordance to your ranking. If your faction comes in first, the points from the missions you'll receive will number in the hundreds of thousands. If I were to make an analogy, these missions are like beef noodle soup. First place will come take all the big pieces of meat. Only then can second place come and take the smaller pieces. As for third place, they'll probably only end up with some leftover ground meat and noodles. The rest is also distributed in accordance to ranking. As for last place, there won't even be soup for them to drink. They'll only be able to lick the bowl." That woman explained it all in one go to Long Chen. They were all disciples from the previous generation and had personally experienced that cruel competition. So they also deeply sympathized with these new disciples who had just arrived. So the start is extremely important. During the first faction competition, you must absolutely get a good ranking. It is the most important. Although the faction competition occurs once a month, if you're unable to obtain a good spot in the first month, then the distance between you and first place will only increase. That distance will only continue to grow larger each month, and it is extremely difficult to catch up, she warned. Long Chen gratefully nodded. After saying his thanks to her, he began walking back to the faction. That senior apprentice sister's words were absolutely correct. The first faction competition was extremely important. Everyone started at the same starting line, but if they allowed others to take the lead, it would be extremely difficult to catch up. That first step would allow them to receive more points and by more resources, increasing the entire power level of the faction. Then by the next competition, the distance would have only grown. If you were once more surpassed, it was practically certain you would never be able to catch up. It was unfortunate he still didn't know what kind of form the faction competition would take. Otherwise, if he could come up with some kind of good strategy, they would also get an advantage. Long Chen had just been walking with his head down when a figure suddenly rushed over. He instinctively dodged to the side. But that figure still crashed onto Long Chen. That person's force was so great that being caught off guard, Long Chen was sent flying. He only managed to stabilize himself dozens of meters away. His fury ignited, as he clearly knew that person had done that on purpose. Looking forward, he saw a tall, large man who was completely bald icily looking at him. That person was a whole head taller than Long Chen. His huge arms were bare with many veins crawling over them, emitting an explosive strength like a volcano that contained endless power. His arms were also covered with tattoos that were extremely crude. Standing there, he was like an unshakable iron tower. Behind that bald man were three others. One of them had a powerful aura and was indifferently looking down on Long Chen. As for the other two, Long Chen recognized them. They were surprisingly Lei Qianshang and Qi Exing. The two of them were smiling at Long Chen's misfortune. "This is the monster amongst monsters you told me about?" the bald man asked Lei Qianshang. "Yes, but don't underestimate him. Although he's only in the late blood condensation realm, he wouldn't be inferior to an outer disciple who is in the muscle rebirth realm. He might even be a bit stronger." That bald man shook his head. Having just advanced to the late blood condensation realm, his physical body is not bad. However, his cultivation base is too trash, not even worth looking at. "Let's go." That bald man directly walked right in front of Long Chen as if he didn't see him. Either Long Chen would get out of the way, or there would be a fight. Despite being shaken by this bald man's power, that arrogance from the depths of his soul would not let him back down. Although he clearly knew this person had to be even stronger than Lei Qianshang, he was unable to accept such humiliation. Indifferently looking at this bald man, he slowly raised a hand. The pill flame in his body began to circulate, preparing to come out at any moment. Seeing Long Chen actually refused to step aside and had taken a fighting stance, that bald man sneered, actually directly charging over, his aura exploding. "Who dares be so impudent in a fighting prohibited region?" Suddenly a shout rang out that made the bald man come to a step. He turned to see that a white-robed man was indifferently looking at them. That man's robes were those of a law enforcer, and his powerful aura was one that he didn't dare look down on. Long Chen was startled, as this person was actually someone he recognized, Senior Apprentice Brother Wan. Seeing Senior Apprentice Brother Wan, that bald man only lightly sneered. Although he looked down on these people who were at the bottom of their generation, he didn't retort. He said to Long Chen, "Brat, next time you block my way I'll smash you to pulp." The bald man walked around Long Chen, the other three also following. From the way they went it seemed they were going to the Shintian Pavilion to buy things. Once those people left, Senior Apprentice Brother Wan smiled slightly to Long Chen. "Let's walk for a bit. I have some things I want to say to you." Long Chen was surprised, not expecting the serious Senior Apprentice Brother Wan to look after him like this. Not only had he driven away the bald man, he was also staying with him for a while. "Many thanks, Senior Apprentice Brother Wan." Long Chen cupped his fists, grateful to him. His intuition told him that bald man was extremely terrifying, even more powerful than Lei Qianshang and Qi Exit. He who was not even in the muscle rebirth realm was not a match for him. That infuriated him. If he had also advanced to the muscle rebirth realm, how could he be so inferior to them? "Looking at you, I'm reminded of myself 3 years ago. I was full of confidence back then. But people should sometimes know how to yield. That's not weakness but simply strategy. Don't try to be brave when you are weak, or the person who will be injured it yourself." Senior Apprentice Brother Wan chatted as they walked. Long Chen smiled bitterly. "I also understand Senior Apprentice Brother Wan's reminder. But unfortunately I just can't control myself. I would rather die than accept humiliation. Long Chen knew that was the influence of his pill god memories. He simply refused to accept any humiliation. Asking him to accept humiliation was an even worse punishment than being killed. If it was the past Long Chen, he would definitely have avoided that kind of situation as best as he could. To forcibly face someone who he wasn't a match for wasn't bravery, but stupidity. That was asking for death. But although he understood this, he was unable to control that arrogance that came from the depths of his very soul. That arrogance would not let him yield to anyone. Senior apprentice brother Wan nodded. That has to do with a person's willpower. I can't say whether that is good or bad. But let me give you one reminder. Your current cultivation base is the lowest within the entire monastery. Your realm is far too low. That person just now is Gu Yang. He has an innate, powerful strength. His physical body is inconceivably strong, and with his powerful combat strength, he has never met an equal within the same realm. More importantly, he revived his ancestral mark before entering the monastery. The power of his bloodline inheritance has already become part of his power. His strength is already beyond your imagination. Long Chen was shocked that he had awakened his ancestral mark before joining the monastery. Such a powerful person had definitely joined the monastery for the 10,000 beast essence blood. Now that his physical body had reached an even higher level of perfection, wouldn't he be even stronger than Tangwana? Your generation of disciples is the strongest generation in the history of the monastery. Not every generation has a genius who can awaken their ancestral mark. But this time there were 4. Other than Tangwana and Yijiqiu who you know, there's also the Gu Yang you just encountered. There's also another person named Guan Wenan. His strength is terrifying, and he's extremely arrogant and cold-hearted. You should be more careful. I tell you this in order to remind that when 100 flowers bloom at once, there is no one who doesn't want to be the lead. But you also know that there is just one lead. The competition will be extremely intense, and success in the first faction competition is crucial. Many thanks Senior Apprentice Brother Wan for your warning. Junior Disciple will remember it. Senior Apprentice Brother Wan's words were the exact same as that Senior Apprentice Sister from the Mission Distribution Building. I look favorably on you. Good luck. Senior Apprentice Brother Wan patted Long Chen on the shoulder and then left. Long Chen walked back to the immortal cave alone. Tang Wan'er and Qing Yu were still in their meditative state. That was a good sign. 3 days later, it was Tang Wan'er who was the first to wake up. After awakening, her aura had become completely stable. It no longer leaked out as before. She had begun to control her own explosive aura. In other words, her realm had already completely stabilized. Long Chen told her about what had happened in the Mission Distribution Building as well as the matter of Gu Yang, giving her a fright. She hadn't expected that there were 2 others who had also awakened their ancestral marks. And one of them had even awakened it before her and Yi Jiqiu. I still have a great deal of Jade Butterfly Queen Bee Crystal. You should distribute it to everyone so that they can all cultivate faster. Furthermore, also send some to Yi Jiqiu. Since we are in an alliance, we'll all be one family. Their strength is also our strength. I'm thinking of buying some more medicinal ingredients and refining some muscle-firming pills for her side as well. Ugh, if I had known earlier, I wouldn't have let them go by those trash medicinal pills. Long Chen couldn't help feeling a bit regretful that he had forgotten about such an important thing. By the time Long Chen had thought of it, they had already bought them. Sometimes he really felt his head wasn't smart enough. That very day, Tang Wan'er bought more medicinal ingredients and Long Chen refined them into pills. His pills were all high-grade, and so they could allow them to stabilize their realm even faster. For the first faction competition, spending a couple extra points to save some more time was definitely worth it. Once all their people had stabilized their cultivation bases, Long Chen had people spar with each other. Only in real combat could people become accustomed to their strength the fastest. Their side had gotten at least 10 more days than other people, giving them enough time to adapt to their cultivation bases. They would be able to fight with much more strength than others. Under practically a day and night training, The time quickly flew by. 1 month quietly passed before they knew it. Dong! A loud bell rang out, reaching every corner of the Xiantian monastery. Long Chen slowly opened his eyes from his rest. The faction competition has started. Chapter 193 Battle Deployment. Following that drawn-out bell sound that reached every corner of the monastery, a certain person slowly opened his eyes. That person was Elder Sun, who had been punished by Elder Tu Fong. Long Chen, I must have your battle skills. Elder Sun was completely confident, and greed surfaced in his eyes. As soon as he had seen Long Chen summon out that ring of light, he had started thinking that. Then he had seen Long Chen using Split the Heavens, firming his desire to obtain his techniques. He had secretly investigated Long Chen and knew that he had no background at all. That was why he was confident in stealing them. Back then, when he had suppressed Long Chen, it was in order to force him to surrender and then think of a way to steal his techniques. Unfortunately, that plan had been ruined by Tu Fong. He hadn't obtained the techniques, and had instead been punished. That had given him a stomach full of fire which he naturally didn't dare release on Tu Fong. So all that hatred had been placed on Long Chen. Slowly standing up, he walked into his immortal cave, coldly snorting, I really want to see just how long you can resist. The Xiantian Plaza was filled with people. Looking at the amount of people, Long Chen was amazed by how powerful the Xiantian monastery was. There were a total of 17 factions, meaning there were 17 core disciples. Of the 1,700 people, there were 1,699 muscle rebirth experts. Long Chen saw many people looking at him with the same eyes filled with contempt. He bitterly smiled and sighed. Did this count as discrimination? As Tang Wanner looked around, she smiled and relaxed a bit. The majority of these people had yet to completely stabilize their realm yet. But as for her and Yi Zhiqiu's people, all their disciples' auras were completely stable and incomparably so as well. That gave them a large advantage. Their disciples would be able to wield at least 90% of a muscle rebirth expert's abilities, while their opponents would be lucky to be able to even use 70% of their power. Warmth filled her when she looked at Long Chen. It seemed this fellow was able to accomplish anything with ease. As long as she could handle the other top experts, their factions would definitely be the strongest amongst all the factions. Although she didn't have many inner disciples in her faction, this battle wouldn't be fought alone, but with everyone. And so their advantage was very clear. You're Tang Wanner. Suddenly Gu Yang walked over to Tang Wanner. Looking her up and down, a bit of praise filled his eyes. Tang Wanner had already heard from Long Chen that Gu Yang was terrifyingly powerful. But due to how close he was with Lei Qianshang and Qi Xan, she knew he was no friend. Not waiting for Tang Wanner to say anything, Gu Yang smiled, You're very beautiful. If you join hands with me, I'll definitely look after you greatly. Thank you, but there's no need for that, lightly replied Tang Wan. As if long since expecting her reply, Gu Yang also didn't get angry. Looking at Long Chen, who was beside her, he said, A useless fellow has no use to you. You'll understand that soon. Tang Wanner's expression changed. He actually dared insult Long Chen in front of this many people. She was about to reply when Long Chen stopped her. He walked a couple steps up to the tower like Gu Yang. Looking at his bald head that reflected the light, he shook his head. I've always heard that people whose heads can't grow hair are supposed to be smart. But seeing your completely hairless head, I can't seem to see any intelligence at all. Do you think that by being bald and having the sunlight reflect on you that it'll increase your looks? You're wrong about that. Who cares if you can reflect light in the day? If you have the capability, then go emit light at night. Tang Wanner covered her mouth, doing her best not to laugh. But her gaze involuntarily landed on Gu Yang's scalp. With the sunlight reflecting off it, yes, it really was dazzling. Gu Yang was also so tall that he was basically a head taller than everyone else, making him stand out even more. Whenever he moved, he would attract everyone's attention. So Long Chen's words were heard by every single person. There was no one who wasn't dumbstruck. Long Chen really was a weirdo. Just what were his guts made of? His cultivation base was clearly the lowest out of everyone, but what he did was always beyond anyone's expectations. Did he not know what it meant to be afraid? Amongst the crowd, Lei Qianshang and Qi Exin smiled. They knew Long Chen's character, and they also knew Gu Yang's character. This time Long Chen was screwed. The both of them had actually originally been pursuing Tang Wan. Other than her fairy-like beauty, it was also because of her powerful strength. If they could obtain such a beauty's heart, not only would they have the love of a beautiful woman, they would also have a powerful helper. Unfortunately for them, ever since Long Chen had appeared, they found that Tang Wan'er had gradually begun to oppose them. In fact, they were now almost mortal enemies. Trying to obtain her heart was definitely impossible. So they naturally would be delighted to see Long Chen mock Gu Yang. Both of them had now advanced to the muscle rebirth realm, and in terms of combat strength, they had already far surpassed Long Chen. However, ever since they had seen Long Kem defeat Gui Sha with his endless techniques, they had always felt that even if they could defeat him with his character, he would definitely make them pay a price. Now they didn't even need to do anything to disgrace Long Chen. That was something they delighted in seeing. Long Chen, I've already said not to stand in my way again or I'd turn you to pulp. Looks like you don't have a good memory. Gu Yang icily tightened his fists. You can come try me, icily replied Long Chen. When it came to true combat strength, Long Chen was not Gu Yang's match. But if it was a life and death battle, Long Chen wouldn't fear anyone. The monastery's rules didn't really suit Long Chen. He didn't like that kind of dainty fighting method. He was used to killing his enemies. In these kinds of battles, he was unable to use his full strength. He was prohibited from killing anyone in the monastery. But as for these spoiled disciples, they were very skilled at that kind of battle. That caused Long Chen to suffer greatly. If Gu Yang really dared attack him, Long Chen would retaliate with his full strength. He would use his fastest speed to kill him. Fighting and massacring were two completely concepts. Long Chen was proficient in the latter. Stop and return to your factions. A cold shout rang out and people walked over. Those people were a dozen senior apprentice brothers. Amongst them was also senior apprentice brother Wan. It seemed senior apprentice brother Wan's position amongst his fellows here was actually quite high. He even nodded slightly to Long Chen. Long Chen was about to thank him when his pupils contracted on the person at the front of this group. Elder son. Long Chen had never thought the one in charge of the faction competition would be Elder son. Wasn't that old bastard supposed to be punished by facing the wall? How has he come here? Long Chen had a bad feeling. He could sense that old fellow didn't like him. But in front of this many people he shouldn't dare to make things difficult for him. Elder son indifferently swept his gaze over everyone. Today is the faction competition. I don't need to tell you how important it is. We're about to open the fighting field. After he finished speaking, everyone felt the metals become hot for a moment, teleporting them to a new location. This was an open mountainside. The mountainside wasn't too large, perhaps just stretching a mile or two. There were some small flags scattered along the hillside. At the peak was Elder son and the others. There they could watch over everyone. Behind them was a pavilion where a huge, ancient bell was suspended in the air. At this time, senior apprentice brother Wan walked up and said to everyone, I will explain the rules. Listen carefully. When the bell rings, that is the start of the competition. The competition will only last for the time it takes for one incense stick to burn. Someone else carried out a huge censer over. Atop the censer was a stick of incense as thick as an arm. When the incense has been burnt away, the bell will once more ring to terminate the competition. You guys can all see the small flags along the mountainside. There are a total of 170 flags. Gather as many flags as you can. It doesn't matter whether you steal them or fight for them. All that matters is how many flags you have gathered before the final bell. Each faction will be given a flag case. Each of you pick someone to carry the flag case. Remember, when the final bell rings, only flags within your flag case count. The ones in your hands will not count. Furthermore, a flag held in a person's hand for more than 3 breaths will be annulled. Once he finished speaking, People immediately walked over to hand over a long tube as thick as a thigh. There was a buckler on it that allowed someone to carry it on their back. Long Chen, who should we choose to be in charge of the flag case? Asked Tang Wan. Long Chen thought for a moment. The flag bearer didn't necessarily have to be strong, but they had to be observant and know how to protect themselves. The goal was for that person to not even be touched by enemies, and they had to be absolutely loyal. Guo Ran, we'll give this job to you. Guo Ran solemnly nodded. Don't worry, boss. Even if I die, I will protect the flag case. I'll protect it like I would protect my woman. After he finished speaking, he rubbed the flag case lovingly as if it was a beautiful woman's leg, causing people to feel noxious. This might seem like a game, but let me remind you all, this is something that will affect your futures, your fates. Whether you will be stepped on by others or step above others will depend on this. When the competition finishes, the amount of flags in your possession will determine your ranking. And your ranking will decide what priority you will have for missions. I trust the senior apprentice sisters at the Mission Distribution Building have already explained that to you. So, in the competition, you must do your best to fight over the flags. Good luck to you all. After senior apprentice brother Wan finished speaking, a disciple brought over a torch while another person also walked up to the bell, preparing to ring it. Wan, your speed is the fastest. When the bell rings, you rush to the left and grab as many flags as possible. I'll take the right. As for the others, form a triangle formation to protect Guo Ran in the middle. We'll hand over all the flags we snatch to Guo Ran. Remember not to keep the flags in your hand for too long or they'll be annulled. Long Chen quickly gave everyone another reminder. He had remembered every single word of that explanation and had thought of a quick strategy. Tang Waner and the others all nodded. At this exact time, the huge incense stick was lit and the bell rang. The competition has begun. Chapter 194 Contest. When the bell rang, Long Chen and Tang Waner were like two released arrows that charged out. At the same time, the other core disciples did not react at all slower than them. Everyone had all realized this was a merciless struggle. They all knew how important it was to get a good ranking this time. But although they all set out at almost the same time, Tang Wano was the absolute fastest. She had awakened his ancestral mark, causing her control over her wind energy to become even smoother. In terms of speed, she was definitely number one. Once the other core disciples and Long Chen charged out, the others also quickly followed up. But Long Chen's side wasn't the same as others. That was because Long Chen's side was slower in order to prioritize safety. As for the other factions, they clearly didn't have such misgivings and all rushed out, not giving a thought to protection. Tang Wana was the first to grab a flag. She threw the flag to Guo Ran. As soon as he caught the flag, he placed it into the flag case on his back. When the flag entered the case, a number lit up the case, 1. At this time the other core disciples had also arrived at the flags they had targeted. But at that moment, Tang Waner had already thrown over a second flag. Her speed was essentially double others. Other people were shaken when they saw such speed. If that continued, her advantage would become all too obvious. But now wasn't the time to fight with others. The first thing to do was to grab all the flags that were on the ground. Only then would they go fight over the flags in other people's possession. Chi Xian's faction was to the right of Long Chen's. He had rushed to his first flag, but when he went to grab it, his hands went through thin air. He was shocked to see the flag had floated up on its own and was flying back. He then saw Long Chen and cursed, "Long Chen, you're asking for it." That flag was pulled over by his spiritual strength. Grabbing it, Long Chen threw it back to his faction and rushed straight to another flag. He didn't even glance at that idiot Chi Xing. It was already such a time, but he still didn't focus on grabbing flags and wasted his time cursing others. Long Chen really admired that kind of intelligence. Don't just stand there. Get the flags. In the distance, Gu Yang gave him a reminder, while he himself resumed rushing for the flags, deciding to rush in front of Long Chen. If Long Chen dared follow his original route, they would definitely meet at the end. A sneer appeared on Gu Yang's mouth. That was because he saw there were 7 flags on Long Chen's path, and they were extremely convenient to grab. He knew Long Chen wouldn't change his course. Flags filled the air. Guoran and the others all focused completely on grabbing those flags and putting them into the flag case. In just a couple breaths, they already had 8 flags. Other than Guoran, the rest of the faction was focused completely on protecting Guoran. They formed a triangle around him as they advanced forward. Long Chen had already told those people that their task was to protect Guoran and not let anyone approach him. Careful! Crap, someone stole our flags. Suddenly one person let out a roar. Since their entire faction had rushed out to get the flags, their faction hadn't been careful and another faction had charged over, snatching the 3 flags in their case, stealing their hard work. By the time that faction's people reacted, all the flags had already landed in their enemy's flag case. That faction furiously charged at the person who had snatched their flags, beating him badly and causing him to faint. But to exchange his injuries for 3 flags had definitely been worth it. That faction then began to charge at another faction, but those people had already been prepared and they were unable to do anything to them. The entire field was completely chaotic. But Long Chen's side wasn't at all messy. All they needed to focus on was catching flags. As for Yi Zhiqiu's side, they had also been attacked, but they were much smarter. Seeing that Long Chen had formed such a protective formation, they had also formed one as well, not letting their attackers gain anything. The core disciples were extremely fast. Tang Wan'er flew her last flag over to Guoran and saw there were already none left around. Looking further away, she saw that while there were a few flags left, she wouldn't be able to rush there fast enough. Other people were already too close to them. Return to defend. Long Chen shouted to Tang Wan'er. He was rushing over to his last flag at this time. Once he got it, he would also run back. The entire battlefield's flags had all been snatched. Long Chen saw that Guoran actually had 36 flags on him. They were currently number 1. Number 2 was Gu Yang's faction. He had a total of 27, while Yi Zhiqiu's faction had 19. Although he didn't know what ranking that was, it was definitely not low. That was because many factions only had 3 to 5 flags. One reason was because they weren't that good at observing the situation and hadn't chosen good paths, ending up running into others. The other reason was because they hadn't seized the initiative and others had taken flags on their paths before they could get to them. Just as Long Chen was about to touch that flag, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. A terrifying gale was charging at him from behind. Before the attack had even arrived, a powerful pressure already caused his bones to shiver. Without even thinking about it, he immediately dodged to the side. Twisting his head, he saw that Gu Yang had already arrived where he had been, currently just missing his punch. Your reactions aren't bad, but that won't stop me from crushing you. Gu Yang was a bit surprised that Long Chen had managed to dodge his sneak attack. He reached out his hand to grab that flag. Long Chen snorted. Using spiritual strength to move things at a distance was extremely costly, and they already had enough flags that he didn't need this one. Pointing a finger, a blue spark shot out. Just as Gu Yang was about to touch that flag, that spark immediately ignited the flag, turning it to ashes. A flag had been trashed just like that. Gu Yang angrily smashed Long Chen with a fist. Die! Long Chen circulated his Feng Fu star and also punched out. Boom! Long Chen felt an unstoppable force send him flying. His arm was in great pain, almost feeling as if it was broken. What powerful strength! Long Chen was greatly shaken. Gu Yang really was inconceivably powerful. He was worthy of being an expert who had long since awakened his ancestral mark. That fist had only relied on his physical strength, but it had still sent him flying. That was the first time Long Chen had encountered someone whose physical body was more powerful than his own. Eat another one of my fists. After sending Long Chen flying, Gu Yang had quickly chased after him, smashing another fist down. This time the sleeve over his arm completely exploded and the tattoo-like runes over his arm lit up. Long Chen immediately felt an immense pressure. He knew Gu Yang's power had far surpassed his expectations. He no longer kept anything back. Heaven and earth shook as the divine ring appeared behind his back. A terrifying aura surged out of him, making him seem like a god of war. At the same time, he extended his hand and a huge flame weapon appeared. That was a 3-meter-long blue-colored broadsword. The flames in that broadsword surged over and over. Runes covered it as it roasted the air. As soon as that flame blade appeared, it slashed down on Gu Yang. Boom! When that huge flame blade collided with Gu Yang's rune-covered fist, a terrifying wave of chi forced back both Long Chen and Gu Yang. Gu Yang was shocked. Although he had heard Long Chen had powerful techniques, as someone who had awakened his ancestral mark, he had never placed a brat who was only in just the late blood condensation realm in his eyes. He had thought that blow would have been enough to crush Long Chen. He really had never imagined Long Chen would be able to receive it head-on. That huge explosion shook everyone into a brief pause. But then they quickly began to wildly fight again. That was because they saw that over half the incense stick had burned away now. They had to fight with all their strength. The entire battlefield was extremely chaotic. None of them had any experience when it came to battling in groups, so they all fought on their own. The entire battlefield looked like a bunch of hoodlums duking it out with each other. As for Elder Sun, a fiery light appeared in his eyes when he saw that divine ring behind Long Chen's back. That ring of light was constantly absorbing energy from heaven and earth, replenishing his spiritual chi. Such a battle skill was definitely able to be called a divine technique. With such a battle skill, he would have no fear of multiple people. His greed for it increased even more. Senior apprentice brother Wan praised Long Chen inside when he saw he was able to block a rune-powered attack by Gu Yang while still being in the blood condensation realm. None of these people knew that at the mouth of an immortal cave on Skywood Mountain, 2 people were lightly drinking tea and watching this entire fight. Sect leader, do you know what battle skill that is? Asked Tu Feng. Ling Yunzi shook his head. I've never heard of it. Although there are similar battle skills, those are all supplementary parts of cultivation techniques that don't help in battle. That ring of light is not just absorbing energy from the world to replenish his own, but it is also increasing his strength by several times. It doesn't look like any cultivation technique or battle skill. Hee, how interesting. Ling Yunzi and Tu Feng were hundreds of miles away watching this competition. Ling Yunzi also wanted to see just how powerful a legendary divergent was. After their exchange, Gu Yang sneered, "So you have 1 or 2 tricks? Then I don't have to worry about killing you." His aura began to rise even further. The runes on his body began to quiver, appearing like countless caterpillars were twisting over his body, both extremely strange and terrifying. As his aura continued to climb, the ground beneath him began to crack. The space around him twisted, making him appear like a human-shaped monster. "I've already said that I'll crush you to pulp." Gu Yang roared. The ground beneath him exploded as he charged at Long Chen. Chapter 195 Fierce Fight. Runes covered all of Gu Yang's body, light flowing through them. His aura had exploded, and Long Chen felt as if he were being stared at by a wild beast. There was no need to doubt Gu Yang's strength. But that arrogant will that came from the depths of his soul would not permit him to retreat even half a step. It wouldn't let him even think about retreating. Despite knowing he wasn't a match for him, even if he were to die under his hands, he wouldn't be permitted to retreat. That caused Long Kem to grumble inside. He knew he couldn't beat him, and yet he wasn't permitted to run. Just how silly was that kind of behavior? But he knew that if he were to force himself to retreat, his Tao heart would be set back. Perhaps that single setback leading to ruin, forming a heart devil. Since he knew he couldn't retreat, then he would risk it all. Taking a deep breath, his Feng Fu star suddenly became still. He was about to summon the Feng Fu battle armor. Gale Moon Slash. Suddenly a huge wind blade slammed down at Gu Yang. Gu Yang let out a smothered shout and was directly sent flying by that terrifying wind blade. That wind blade overflowed with power and cut a huge scar into the land. A graceful figure appeared in front of Long Chen. With her hair and clothes fluttering in the breeze, the current Tangwana really did look like a goddess. "Give Gu Yang to me. You go protect everyone. As long as we endure for a bit longer, will win. Focusing on Gu Yang, she clapped her hands together and a wave of spiritual qi surged out of her. Wind blades filled the air around Tangwan. Those quickly revolving wind blades were like hundreds of flying flowers cutting apart the space. At the same time, a long sword appeared in her hands. That was a long sword formed from her wind blades. That terrifying wind energy caused the space around the long sword to constantly warp. The runes atop the long sword shined brightly as if they had been bestowed with life. A continuous roar came from it, battle intent overflowing. That was the current Tangwaner's peak state. She was truly like a beautiful battle goddess as she stood there. Long Chen nodded. Handing Gu Yang to her was the best option. Of everyone present, only Tangwaner had the qualifications to fight against Gu Yang on an even level. He rushed back towards their faction. Gu Yang looked at Tangwan. "You really refuse to join hands with me?" Tangwaner didn't reply, merely icily staring at him. The wind blades around her body spun quicker, ready to attack at any moment. Gu Yang snorted, "Since you fail to appreciate my kindness, don't blame me for being merciless." The runes covering his body once more lit up brightly. A faint gold light appeared over his fists as he punched at her. The wind blade in her hand hacked down, smashing onto that fist, emitting a heaven-shaking explosion. The ground beneath their feet immediately cracked into pieces. Both parties were sent flying back, but while being blown back, Tangwaner also shouted out, "Wind pierce!" The wind blades around her body all merged together, forming an arrow that shot at Gu Yang. It reached him in just the blink of an eye. Gu Yang was startled and instinctively punched out, smashing that huge arrow into pieces. The arrow did break into pieces. But it didn't explode, instead it split into countless smaller wind blades. Once those wind blades separated, they were immediately like bees attracted to honey, slashing down on Gu Yang. An ordinary person would be directly cut into a corpse by those thousands of wind blades. Gu Yang was also given a great fright, not expecting Tangwaner's attack to be so flexible. Furthermore, Tangwaner's wind blades were incredibly powerful. Even he was unable to let them cut down on him. Vajra protecting the body. Gu Yang roared and raised his fists to block. The light from his body suddenly soared, making him become like the sun. Those countless wind blades were immediately disintegrated by that light. Ling Yunzi smiled in the distance. This Gu Yang really is powerful. For him to have awakened his ancestral mark 2 years ago, his talent really is not bad. Tu Fang nodded. Gu Yang is definitely powerful and his talent is exceptional. His body coincidentally meets all the requirements of his ancestral bloodline. However, his talent itself isn't higher than Tangwaner's. Tangwaner is merely suffering because she has only just awakened her ancestral mark and still can't use the ancestral mark properly. Who do you think is stronger? Ling Yunzi lightly sipped his tea. At the present moment, Gu Yang is a bit stronger. But half a year later they might be even, and within 1 year, Tangwaner will definitely surpass him, Tu Fang confidently predicted. Ling Yunzi also nodded. 1 year from now is also coincidentally the opening of the mysterious 9 Black Realm. This group of children arrived at just the right time to enter it. Tu Fang smiled somewhat bitterly. The mysterious 9 Black Realm is said to have come from ancient times. It opens once every 100 years, and it said the opportunities within are limitless. But at that time both the righteous and devil path's disciples will all enter. That's definitely a desperate struggle. I wonder just how many people will die inside. Danger and opportunity exist together. What expert's path is easy? Fighting against the devil path is absolutely necessary. For all the commoners trying to live under the heavens, the only option is to massacre them. Ling Yunzi watched those fighting disciples as he said that. It seems a good show is about to start. Tangwaner and Gu Yang were fighting fiercely, fists and blades constantly colliding, huge gales blowing out. But Ling Yunzi's gaze wasn't on them, but on Long Chen. Long Chen had only just returned to his faction and saw that they were practically all fighting, with enemies coming from every direction. It was obvious that they would be focused considering that they had the most flags. Turn the triangle formation into a circular formation. Protect the flag inside. Whoever passes through will be beat to death by me. Long Chen let out a loud shout, sending the people in front of him flying with a single kick. Currently the people around them were like the tide trying to surge over them. They urgently needed his help. Otherwise, if this formation was broken through, all their flags would be stolen. Then they really have fought for nothing. Long Chen also that Yi Zhiqiu's side was also being focused by two powerful factions. They were already in a disadvantage and couldn't afford to send any help over. But what relieved him a bit was that although they were fighting many people, everyone really was protecting Guoran very well. They were like an iron shield, and for a moment they still weren't in danger. They had all had the advantage of the high-grade muscle firming pill. Their combat strength should be quite a bit higher than their opponents. Even if their opponents flooded over them, they would still be able to endure. After all, this wasn't a true life and death battle. No one dared to attack with their greatest strength. They could only try to knock down their opponents. That allowed them to endure for even longer. Seeing that there was only half a foot of the incense stick remaining, he estimated that there was not even a quarter hour before it was finished. As long as they could persevere through that time, they would win. Long Chen died. Suddenly a loud roar rang out and a chilling cold wind attacked him. Long Chen instinctively raised his flame blade, slashing it in the direction of the voice. A strange sound rang out as Long Chen flame blade collided with a water blade. Steam filled the air. Qi Exin. Only then did Long Chen clearly see who had come to attack him. Long Chen, I said I'd make you regret ever being born in this world. You'll soon learn what suffering feels like. A sinister smile appeared on Qi Xian's face. Brandishing his flame blade, Long Chen sneered, just you is unable to do that. Hee, you'll understood soon. When that time comes, don't kill yourself in regret. That would be too boring. Qi Xian darkly laughed, the water blade in his hand slashing down on Long Chen. Blocking it once more, steam filled the air again. It's a bit troublesome. Long Chen's expression changed slightly. Water subdued fire. Long Chen's flame blade was oppressed by his water blade and was unable to release its full strength. That didn't mean that his flame blade wasn't strong, but simply that his cultivation base wasn't high enough and he was unable to fully release the might of the blue flame. If he also advanced to the muscle rebirth realm, although he wouldn't dare look down on Qi Xian's water blade, he definitely wouldn't be hindered so greatly. Let me see how long you can last. Spiritual qi flowed from his hand into his water blade, causing it to become much larger, at least 30 meters long. He slashed it down on Long Chen. He wants to fight me with spiritual qi, sneered Long Chen. With the support of his divine ring, he had no need to fear that. Increasing his spiritual qi as well, he began to crazily fight with Qi Exin. As water and fire continuously collided, steam filled the entire air. Qi waves surged out as both parties began a fight of attrition. Qi Exin, you still haven't handled that trash? Then let me give you hand. Lei Qianshang suddenly also appeared, a huge thunderblade appearing in his hands. Long Chen was alarmed, quickly taking a step back. Looking around, his expression changed. 3 armies were crazily attacking his faction, attempting to break through. With those 3 armies' attacks, their iron-like defense was also starting to fail. Occasionally one of their members would be knocked unconscious, unable to fight any further. Everyone stand firm. Time is almost up, shouted Long Chen. That was because he saw the incense stick was only a couple inches tall now. The faction competition was about to end. At this moment, they had to continue persevering. Maybe you should focus on yourself. Lei Qianshang sneered and smashed a fist at Long Chen. Qi Exin also wasn't slower, his water blade slashing down Long Chen. 2 muscle rebirth core disciples had joined hands to defeat Long Chen. That slightly surprised Ling Yunzi. This isn't exactly fair. Joining hands to attack others is a bit contrary to our original intentions, frowned Tu Feng. Ling Yunzi smiled slightly. It doesn't matter whether it is fair or not. Experts will never let such a word leave their mouths. Crying for fairness is always the helpless chant of weaklings. Experts can make everything unfair. If they wanted to, they could trample over weaklings with the most barbaric and rough methods. Let us see just how Long Chen will handle this unfairness. If my guess isn't wrong, he still has something to fall back on. Tu Feng looked silently at Long Chen. How could a rookie at the 7th heaven stage of qi condensation contend against 2 muscle rebirth core disciples? So what if he was a divergent? In the face of strength, he could only lower his head. Tu Feng sighed helplessly. Just at this moment, Long Chen's eyes closed. All of heaven and earth seemed to have faded away from him, entering a state of complete silence. Feng Fu battle armor appear. When he once more opened his eyes, a star floated around in his eyes. Chapter 196 Traders. Feng Fu battle armor appear. Long Chen let out a shout inside his mind. When he once more opened his eyes, a star had appeared in his eyes. Buzz. Space trembled and chi waves soared into the sky. A terrifying pressure shot out in all directions. The current Long Chen was like an awakened ancient beast, his ferociousness shaking the land. The flame blade in his hand that was only a couple meters long immediately grew to the size of 150 meters. It was like a heavenly blade as it slashed down on the two of them. Boom! Qi Xen and Lei Qianshang were immediately like two weeds miserably struck back. They only managed to stabilize once they had been knocked back hundreds of meters. The surrounding people were all given an absolute fright when they saw Long Chen's attack. They were completely stupefied as they saw both Qi Xen and Lei Qianshang miserably sent flying. Standing at the top of the mountainside was Elder's son. He involuntarily stood up, his eyes shining as he stared at Long Chen. Ling Yunzi was also moved. What a powerful battle skill. It allowed him to instantly release a strength tens of times greater than usual. His current aura is almost comparable to the muscle rebirth realm. Tu Feng was given a shock. That explosive power was at least dozens of times stronger than it had been before. How could this world really contain such a terrifying battle skill? After sending them flying, Long Chen knew that he had to finish this as quickly as possible. Stepping forward, he charged back at the two of them, slashing down ferociously with his flame blade. Both Lei Qianshang and Qi Xen were absolutely shocked. At the same time their fury also exploded. The two of them were muscle rebirth experts, and core disciples as well. But they were miserably forced back. Previously they had been careless, just playing with Long Chen as a kind of humiliation. They had never thought Long Chen would release such a powerful strength. They no longer dared be overconfident. Both of their auras completely exploded out. Their huge blades explosively grew as they charged at Long Chen. Boom boom boom. The frantic collisions of those huge blades caused the land to split, stones to fly, shocking everyone around them so much that they had to quickly retreat. The current Long Chen really was like a god of war. He actually blocked all of Qi Xen and Lei Qianshang's attacks head-on. But that still wasn't enough for him. Long Chen could sense his Feng Fu battle armor's spiritual qi rapidly running out. In just a couple breaths he would be running on empty. Time to risk it all. Long Chen clenched his teeth and raised his flame blade high into the air. All the energy within his Feng Fu star surged into his flame blade. His flame blade immediately began to crazily grow. The runes on top of it became increasingly clear. Split the heavens. Lei Qianshang and Qi Xen's expressions changed. They recognized this move as the one Long Chen had used to defeat Ge Sha. Now Long Chen was using it again, and it was even more powerful than before. They both turned numb inside, quickly exploding out with all their strength without leaving the slightest bit in reserve. Water Arrow World. Thunder Blade destroying space. The both of them brought out their strongest moves. 3 lights collided in the air. Terrifying energy exploded out, sending the surrounding people flying. Those who were too close directly fainted. When that backlash chi wave struck him, Long Chen was already powerless to resist and sent flying. As for Lei Qianshang and Qi Xen, they were also not better off than him and buried under the ground. Long Chen panted for breath. His flame blade completely disappeared along with his divine ring. His spiritual chi was almost exhausted. Raising his head to look at the incense stick, he saw that it was about to reach the end. "Protect the flag bearer." Long Chen suddenly let out a loud shout as he saw there were people charging at Guoran. Right now there were only 20-something people still standing beside Guoran. Hearing his shout, they hastily surrounded Guoran, frantically fighting off against those people. "Die!" Long Chen was suddenly struck in the back and sent flying by Lei Qianxia. He directly coughed out blood in midair. Without spiritual qi to protect his body, his organs were all heavily injured, beginning to break down. Falling on the ground, Long Chen coughed up even more blood. But he didn't even care about his injuries, still looking at Guoran. He hoped those people would be able to endure just a couple more breaths. Victory was within reach. Long Chen's heart was about to pound out of his chest. This matter concerned all their futures. Qi Xen icily looked at him and sneered, "Long Chen, do you remember? I said that I'd make you regret ever being born in this world. It's time for my revenge. Now." Hearing Qi Xen suddenly shout, Long Chen's expression suddenly changed and he roared, "Careful, Guoran." Guoran had only just heard his warning when he felt a sharp pain from his back, causing him to vomit out blood. Guoran saw that this attacker was actually someone who had been protecting him this entire time. Phew. But before he could even say anything, his right rib was struck by someone else, the sounds of bone breaking causing people to wince. Suddenly he felt his back lighten as his flag case was snatched away. Guoran actually frantically ignored his pain and grabbed onto the flag case, wanting to grab it back. That was something that would determine everyone's fates. Furthermore, he had promised Long Chen he would protect the flag case even if he died. He tightly held on to it. "Bastard, let go." That person tried pulling several times but was unable to get him to release it. The two people who had attacked him first now came up and stamped on his arm ruthlessly. The sound of his bones cracking rang out. Both his arms were now broken, but Guoran still didn't let go. Bang! That person kicked Guoran in the stomach, causing him to vomit out more blood, and he was sent flying. Those people who surrounded him had been fighting off outer attacks this entire time. They hadn't even realized anything was happening behind them. By the time they turned to look, that person had already taken the flag case and thrown it into the distance. Someone from Gu Yang's faction had already long since been ready and caught it, putting all the flags into their faction's case. Dong! The incense stick finally burnt away and the loud bell signified the end of the competition. All the fighting stopped. Tang Wanner turned to look at Guoran and saw those three traitors' icy smiles. To her it felt as if all of heaven and earth had changed color. "Long Chen, I've already said I'd make you life a death worse than death. Now you believe me, right, huh?" Qi Xian's unbridled laughter echoed throughout. A similar tragedy had also struck Yi Zhiqiu's side. Two of their disciples had turned traitor, sending their flags to their enemies. Long Chen slowed walked over to Tang Wanner. Seeing her inconsolable expression, his heart ached. "Long Chen." Tang Wanner hugged onto Long Chen and sobbed with grief. "Why is this? Why is this?" She had always been devoted to her people. She had never imagined there would be people to betray her. That caused her to feel even more grief than just losing. It was as if someone was twisting a knife in her heart. "Tang Wanner, how is it? Now I'll give you another chance to join hands with me." Seeing Tang Wanner actually go to Long Chen to cry, Gu Yang was actually furious. Long Chen icily glanced at Gu Yang. "I will make you repay this 100 times. Gently patting Tang Wanner, Long Chen walked over to those three traitors. Those three had all joined the Heaven-Earth faction later when Tang Wanner and Guoran had gone to find some fresh talent. Tang Wanner was filled with remorse. She hated herself for being so blind. She actually didn't know how to judge people. If it was Long Chen, he definitely wouldn't have let such people join them. The more she thought about that, the more grief she felt. "Sorry, Long Chen, we're just working for our master. Who asked you guys to not know how to appreciate kindness?" One of them apologized, but everyone could see he wasn't the slightest bit apologetic. Tu Feng angrily stood up. This is too much. I really have been blind to allow such people to join the Xiantian monastery. Tu Feng wasn't just speaking of those three, but also those people who had used them. An honorable and open competition had been turned into a game of traitors by them. That was completely contrary to the competition's intentions. Trash will never throw itself into the trash can. What are you so angry about? Ling Yunzi only lightly sipped some tea. Sect leader, you want to let them off just like this? Tu Feng was clearly infuriated. Ha, Tu Feng, you're also this old now. How can you still not see through what will happen? Since trash won't throw itself away, don't we just need someone to clean it up? Smiled Ling Yunzi. You mean? Tu Feng stiffened. Just calm down a bit. Normally you'd handle all this trash, but this time you can rest and watch a show. Come, drink some more tea. Ling Yunzi raised a teacup, his eyes focused on Long Chen. A golden light shined within his eyes. If the legends really were true, he knew what he would do. Long Chen didn't even respond to that person's words. He walked up to Guoran. Currently Guoran had fractures everywhere and his aura was extremely chaotic. Guoran was extremely sullen. Having been sneak attacked, he hadn't had any defenses at all. I'm sorry, boss. I should die. I didn't accomplish the mission you gave me. Guoran began to cry. Good brother, you did well. This isn't your fault, consoled Long Chen. Guoran truly had done extremely well. Although he might appear like a slippery character on the outside, he was a real man who kept his promises. Otherwise he also wouldn't have been beaten to such a state while still refusing to let go of the flag case. At that time the only thing he had been thinking of was those flags, the futures and honor of everyone. He hadn't even cared about his own life. Boss, if only I were a bit stronger, if I was just a bit smarter, this wouldn't have happened. I should die, Guoran sobbed like a child. Long Chen gently placed his hand on the back of Guoran's head. Feeding him a healing medicinal pill, he let him faint. Otherwise such an impact was not good for his spirit and might even affect his Dao heart. Placing Guoran down, Long Chen walked over to the three traitors icily. One of them sneered and tilted his head at him. What, you don't accept it? You can try and get back at us next time. But I don't think you'll have that opportunity. Now you'll forever be trampled by us, forever starving, ha dash. Plop. Chapter 197 Killing People. Cold light flashed by and blood spurted. Three heads soared into the sky, blood from their necks spurting out. When those three heads once more tumbled to the ground, those expressions were still locked in a ridiculing sneer. Long Chen's blade was too fast, far beyond any of their expectations. Those three would never have even dreamed that Long Chen would kill them. Drip. Drip. Blood slowly dripped from his blade onto the ground. That sound was extremely light, but in the currently deathly silent battlefield, it sounded more like a huge hammer crushing people's hearts. You caused my brother to bleed and caused my beauty to cry. My merciless blade will cut down any traitors. Looking down on those three corpses, the involuntarily muttered. It was like he was an ignited explosive. His killing intent had completely surged out to fill the entire world. Long Chen suddenly moved, appearing before the two still stupefied two traitors from Yi Zhiqiu's faction. At this time his eyes were completely scarlet, just like some kind of crazed beast from hell. Arriving in front of those, Long Chen's terrifying killing intent completely broke any of their courage. Their faces were as pale as paper and they were horrified to realize that their bodies wouldn't listen to them. They wanted to run, but were unable to even more. No! Plop. Long Chen's blade mercilessly cut across their necks, cutting off their voices. The scent of blood filled the air. People were completely stunned as they smelled that scent. Long Chen was killing people? Everyone was completely horrified. Looking at that blood-dyed person who looked like the Grim Reaper demanding their lives, there was not one person whose heart didn't tremble in fear. Although they had already experienced a life and death trial in order to join the monastery, that was their limit. In front of Long Chen, whose killing intent was filling the entire world around them, they all felt their bones shivering. Some people clenched their mouths tight. That was because if they didn't, their teeth would involuntarily clatter together. Lei Qinsheng, Qi Exin, and Gu Yang's expressions all changed. They had never expected Long Chen to be so ferocious and kill others in front of this many people. In my life, I will never betray anyone. But I also will not allow anyone to betray me. He had actually wanted to say more, but suddenly he felt the world spin around him. Having summoned the Fengfu battle armor and used Split the Heavens, he was already out of energy. He was then attacked by Lei Qianshang, causing him to be extremely injured. After all, he wasn't in the muscle rebirth realm, and his spiritual qi was still lacking compared to him. Then he saw the scene of his faction disciples betraying them, his brother severely injured, and Tang Wan'er inconsolably sobbing. His head had buzzed. An unprecedented killing intent had soared out of him. That kind of killing intent wasn't just his own, but also from the will within his soul. Even in that state where he had had no spiritual qi, he had killed 5 people. Now that he had killed those 5 traitors, he was absolutely unable to endure any longer. He collapsed. But before he could fall on the ground, 2 soft bodies came to hold him. A pure spiritual qi poured into his body. Both Tang Wan'er and Yi Zhiqiu had come. A dab of warmth had appeared on Yi Zhiqiu's normally icy expression. Tear stains still could be seen on her beautiful face. As for Tang Wan'er, she was still sobbing. As she gave Long Chen spiritual qi, she also choked back her tears. Don't cry. Didn't I already tell you? I'll be in charge of handling these fools, and you'll be in charge of being as beautiful as a flower. If that group of bastards make you cry, I'll make them bleed. Long Chen forced out a laugh. Scoundrel, you've caused a disaster for yourself. Tang Wan'er couldn't help crying. She hadn't expected Long Chen to go kill others. Thinking of the consequences, she was filled with grief. She couldn't control herself, and all she could do was send him spiritual qi. On Skywood Mountain, Ling Yunzi was watching everything lightly. A bit of admiration appeared in his eyes when he had seen that grim reaper-like figure. It really is just like the legends say. Tu Feng, look, there's someone else taking out the trash for you. Tu Feng bitterly smiled. This Long Chen really has guts. Does he not know what taboos are? And sect leader, what do you mean about the legends? Ling Yunzi stood up and walked to the edge, looking up at the floating clouds covering the peak of Skywood Mountain. The legendary divergents are born in defiance of the heavenly Daos, and everything they do is in defiance of the heavenly Daos. They don't fear the heavenly Daos oppression, defying their laws. Such a person dares to resist even the will of the heavenly Daos, not even caring about the laws set in place by the heavenly Daos. Do you think they would care about the rules of our monastery? Tu Feng shook his head. Are divergents crazy? If they act like that, then the only result would of course be death. Who dares resist the heavenly Daos? If you lived within the 1,000 major worlds, then you needed to comply with the laws of the heavenly Daos. Only by understanding and following the will of the heavenly Daos could you live. To defy the heavens was to foolishly ask for death. No matter how powerful a person was, they would always be under the laws of the heavenly Daos. It was no wonder all divergents were like shooting stars, rising abruptly and bursting out their radiance like a firework, only to be short-lived and disappear. Of those experts who stood at the peak of this world, not one was a divergent. That was because divergents only had one fate, to be exterminated under the heavenly Daos. So Tu Feng couldn't help sighing sorrowfully. This time you're wrong. Sometimes the process is even more important than the result. The world is endless, and cultivators are like grains of sand. But how many people are able to have a good death? Even if they comply with the heavenly Daos as they attack the supreme realms above, aren't the majority still destroyed under the heavenly Daos? Death isn't the end. The journey is the most important part of a cultivator's life. There are millions of Daos when cultivating. Some are grand Daos while some are ordinary Daos. As for whether someone has a grand Dao or an ordinary Dao, who can possibly tell? Since no one can, then no one has the right to judge the path that others choose. Remember, no matter how high your cultivation base, you must maintain a humble heart. Ling Yunzi solemnly gave Tu Feng a reminder. Tu Feng respectfully bowed. Many thanks, sect leader. Sensing my current state of mind, it's improved by quite a bit. It seems I really was too attached. Tu Feng was filled with respect for Ling Yunzi. He could sense that in terms of the mental state, he was far too lacking to him. But sect leader, since Long Chen has killed others, then according to the rules he must be expelled, said Tu Feng. Long Chen's potential was endless. But they also absolutely could not change the rules of the monastery. Tu Feng really couldn't bear to expel such a genius. Don't worry about it. Let's just watch a bit more. Ling Yunzi smiled and continued watching. He wanted to see what Elder Sun would do. Elder Sun himself had never expected Long Chen to be so daring as to kill people here. But that actually delighted him inside. When Long Chen had killed the first 3, he had been too surprised, but he had been entirely capable of stopping him from killing the other 2 traitors. But he hadn't, in order for Long Chen to violate the sect's rules even more. That way no one could protect him. Long Chen, you are too brazen. You killed members of the same sect in the competition. With such a berserk heart and vicious methods, you are no different from the devil demons. Elder Sun only righteously stood up once he saw Long Chen had already broken as many rules as he was going to for now. With Tang Wanner's assistance, Long Chen had recovered a bit. Although he couldn't fight, he could at least stand on his own now. Lighting shedding the 2 of their supports, he walked up a couple steps. Although he was still extremely weak, but after seeing him kill 5 fellow disciples, everyone in front of him recoiled, forming a path for him. As for Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu, they followed behind him. They were both uneasy about his punishment. Looking at Elder Sun with his sanctimonious expression, he suddenly laughed. Shameful, what are you laughing about? Raged Elder Sun. I'm laughing at you, an old idiot who is clearly laughing joyfully inside but acts like some righteous man with morals. Even a lying whore is better than you, disdainfully said Long Chen. Tang Wan'er and Yi Zhiqiu glanced at each other, both seeing the despair in the other's eyes. Long Chen truly did cause them to both like and hate him. Even at this time, he purposely went to infuriate Elder Sun. They had actually been hoping to save him, perhaps somehow lightening his sentence. After all, Long Chen's potential was so great and the monastery's rules did favor the strong. But Long Chen's insult completely ruined any of their hopes. Giving Elder Sun a slap in the face like that and then asking him for a favor was just seeking humiliation for themselves. Long Chen, don't talk nonsense. Senior apprentice brother Wan walked up and gave Long Chen a reminder. He gave him a meaningful glance, telling him not to resist and that there was still a chance. Long Chen smiled slightly and nodded to senior apprentice brother Wan. He was grateful his good intentions, but he was also helpless. Perhaps he might be able to accept a bit of humiliation, but he was not able to accept his friends being bullied. Most importantly, he was unable to accept being betrayed. That had left an unforgettable hatred within him, a hate that made him want to kill all traitors. Long Chen sneered at the angered Elder Sun. Although I haven't been a member of the monastery for long, I know the monastery's objective is to use righteousness to eradicate wickedness. But everyone has all seen what just happened. How is that righteousness? Using the trust of comrades to stab them in the back? Chi Xen sneered. Idiot, this is called strategy and smarts. All is fair in war, and if you couldn't even think of it, that just means you were stupid. Chi Xian's words immediately infuriated all of Tang Wan'er and Yi Zhiqiu's people. What kind of crap is this? Those who join our factions are our brothers. This is how you treat our trust? Fuck your granny. According to your words, we should all just stop cultivating and starting stabbing each other in the back. A rain of cursed hailed down on Chi Xen. Betrayal was always the most painful thing for people. But Chi Xen just sneered with a mocking smile in response to those inflamed disciples. Gu Yang, Lei Qiansheng, and all their people stood together, disdainfully looking down on them. Contemptible trash will forever be just trash no matter how much they cultivate. Long Chen will support you. Suddenly 2 people walked out of the crowd and stood by Long Chen. Chapter 198 Sect Leader appears. What Long Chen had never expected was that Song Mingyuan and Li Qi now both walked out of the crowd to stand with Long Chen. Clearly they were displaying their dissatisfaction with Qi Xian's contemptible methods. Long Chen, your character is just how a man should be like. Li Qi gave Long Chen a thumbs up. Then he icily swept his gaze over Gu Yang, Lei Qiansheng, Qi Xian, and all their people, his eyes filled with contempt. That caused Gu Yang and them to be infuriated. They clenched their fists angrily, but they sensibly didn't do anything. They just waited for Elder Sun's ruling. At this time, Elder Sun cursed inside to see that 2 Song Mingyuan and Li Qi, 2 core disciples, would express their support of Long Chen. That was definitely a kind of provocation to him, but he acted as if hadn't seen them, coldly shouting, "Long Chen, you've massacred your fellow sect members. That is something indisputable, and even if you try to refute it, you cannot escape from your crime." Long Chen icily laughed. What nonsense. I, Long Chen, am someone who can support all of heaven and earth. I have never not admitted to anything I've done. And furthermore, what do you mean I can't escape my crime? Massacring my fellow sect members? Have your eyes gone blind with age? These pieces of trash that stab their comrades in the back are also fellow sect members? How presumptuous. This is just a competition and not a true battle. How can it count as stabbing in the back? Elder Sun had already flown into a rage after being repeatedly cursed by Long Chen. But despite wishing to crush Long Chen to death inside, he didn't dare do anything. That was because he knew everything happening here was being monitored in secret by the high-level members of the monastery. He had to act fair and impartial. Competition? Then let me ask you, what does the monastery spend so much effort to raise us into? Is to play such a game the whole time? Questioned Long Chen. Of course not. The monastery raises you in order for you to mature into people worthy of respect, people who will uphold the righteous path. Your goal is to eradicate those devil demons who endanger the common people, protecting them from their cruelty. Elder Sun put on the airs of a very just and righteous man. But Long Chen had long since seen through that old man's nature. He ridiculed, then in other words, we are to become fighters against the devil demons. Then let me ask, will we face danger when fighting against them? Rubbish, how could there not be danger when fighting? Righteous people must not be afraid. Long Chen directly cut him off. Since the fighting will be dangerous, then that is a life and death struggle. Then the reason we cultivate today is because each extra bit of strength will relate to whether or not we will be able to survive those great battles. In other words, this struggle for resources right now is to train us so that we can have a greater chance to survive at that time. Suddenly Long Chen's voice grew louder, echoing through the sky. Then you old bastard, tell me, is this competition supposed to be just a game? They betrayed us, causing us to lose all the resources we should have gained. Now without resources, our power will drop, affecting our cultivation. As we lose out step by step, our entire power level will weaken. That means even more of us here will die in the battles between the righteous and devil paths. So tell me, is this a fucking knife in the back or not? Long Chen's quiet aura once more erupted when he finished speaking, and his murderous aura locked onto Elder Sun. Everyone's hearts trembled. Although senior apprentice brother one had warned everyone that this wasn't a game, everyone had still felt that it's still simply playing around. It was just a game that very important. They had never thought that this game would concern their future life and death. Now that Long Chen had spelled it out for them, they were completely shook. They knew Long Chen's words were not alarmist at all. Elder Sun's face was green, not knowing how to respond. If he accepted Long Chen was right, then his killing those people could be considered a justified action and he would be unable to punish him. He wanted to retort, but he couldn't just lie through his teeth like that. That would just cause even more people to despise him, losing all his prestige. His expression sunk. In his heart he already hated Long Chen to the death. It had been many years since someone had cursed him right in the face, and he actually had no way to retort now. You have nothing to say? Do you know why the monastery would conduct such a team battle? Why would they choose this over solo battles? Isn't it because they want to raise the core disciples' leadership abilities, letting everyone work with one heart, fostering trust between us? Who cares if a person is that much stronger? Can they be stronger than a whole team? And that's the only reason the monastery uses such a method for the competition. Mutual protection, uniting as one entity, releasing even more power. Long Chen pointed at Gu Yang and them, ridiculing, as for the smarts of you idiots, that's just a bunch of bullshit. You think a little clever ploy can count as smarts? With your little tricks, if you ran into the sinister and crafty devil demons, you would be turned into a corpse before you could ever try playing smart. Why are we in teams? So in the face of a death battle, we can leave our backs to our comrades. Because we have that trust, even if those comrades die, we know they'll protect our backs. Can a bunch of pigs like you understand that? Gu Yang's face sunk and he retorted, A lose is a lose. What use do your complaints have? Long Chen smiled slightly. Of course such words have no use for a pig like you who only thinks about himself. But I believe there are people who can understand my words. Those spies still hidden within other people's factions. If you can understand what I'm saying, then be a true person and walk out on your own. Don't deceive other people's trust and feelings. After Long Chen finished speaking, one person sighed and walked out of his faction. He said to his core disciple, I'm really sorry. I've disappointed everyone's trust. I will leave the faction, but I also will not return to my original faction. After that person walked out, there were immediately another 7 others whose faces were red from shame who also walked out. The first person to walk out was just about to leave his faction when he was grabbed by the core disciple. He bitterly smiled. If you want to kill me, go ahead. I won't resist. Being treated as a brother amongst everyone really caused my heart incomparable torment over the past few days. I've had enough of that pain. I want to be like Long Chen, being a real, genuine man. Even if you kill me now, I think I'll still count as a real man. The entire crowd was silent, watching that core disciple. That core disciple heavily patted him on the shoulders. What are you doing? If you leave, where am I supposed to get another brother? That person was shocked. Looking into that core disciple's eyes, he couldn't hold back his tears. Hey, if you keep acting like a girl then I really will kick you out. Come, this many brothers can't lose you. That core disciple was filled with emotion. After that disciple returned to his faction, there were immediately several other core disciples who called back those people who had walked out. Don't just stand there stupidly. Everyone's already returned, so don't just stand there like an idiot. Other core disciples also scolded them lightly. Those people weren't much better than the first one, also crying from emotion. Ling Yunzi and Tu Fang saw everything from above. Ling Yunzi nodded. Long Chen is a natural leader. He has an innate charisma that causes people to follow him to the grave. With just a couple words, he was able to fill quite a few of them with an unswerving loyalty. That's not something ordinary experts are able to do. Tu Fang also nodded. Long Chen had a wisdom that did not match his age. He had managed to see through the monastery's goals with just a glance. But he was unable to comprehend why someone so smart would do some things that were so stupid. With Long Chen's wisdom, even if he had suffered defeat this time, he would definitely be able to turn the situation around quickly. Why did he have to use such an extreme method? It's Long Chen, right? I am Luo Tsang. I hope we can be friends. That first core disciple who forgave his undercover agent and pulled that disciple back walked over to Long Chen and extended a hand. I don't like having friends. Long Chen shook his head. Instead I like having life and death brothers. Long Chen also extended his hand. That person's expression changed when he heard the first half, but hearing the rest he laughed heartily. The two of them clasped hands. Luo Tsang laughed. Good, hopefully there will be a day where I can stand with Brother Long on the battlefield. Following Luo Tsang's actions, there were also several other core disciples who walked over to shake hands with Long Chen. Although Long Chen's cultivation base was the weakest here, everyone deeply admired that arrogance and heroic nature of his. As for Gu Yang, Lei Qiansheng, and Qi Exin, their expressions were extremely ugly. That was because all those turncoats had been placed there by them. Now that all those disciples turned against them, their petty tricks had immediately been revealed. Those turncoats who were allowed to return to their faction looked at them especially contemptuously, causing them to almost burst from fury. Elder son, Long Chen has broken the monastery's rules and maliciously killed people. His crime cannot be forgiven. Please give us justice, Elder. Qi Exin respectfully bowed to Elder son. Originally, Elder son had been completely shut up by Long Chen's questions. Then, seeing more and more core disciples walk over to him, he immediately realized the situation was getting out of his control. He had been thinking of how to react to all this when Qi Exin's words have him a reminder. I really have been an idiot. What do I need to argue about with him? Since he's killed people and broken the monastery's rules, I can just directly declare his punishment. Elder son gravely said, Long Chen, no matter how you quibble, you cannot change the fact you maliciously killed people. But you should be thankful that the monastery's rules favor the strong. You won't have to pay with your life for killing others. However, from today onwards, you will never be a disciple of this monastery again. You are expelled. Tang Wanno was the first to walk up. Since Elder has made such a judgment, then Tang Wanno will also leave the monastery with Long Chen. What? Everyone was given a shock. Tang Wanno would actually go with Long Chen if he was expelled. Yi Zhiqiu also wishes to leave. Yi Zhiqiu was completely determined. Long Chen was dumbstruck. He was about to say something when someone else then spoke. Song Mingyuan also wishes to leave. Li Qi also wishes to leave. Luo Tsang as well. Other than these 5, there were also another 4 core disciples who stood out. They clearly believed that with this many people together, the monastery definitely wouldn't expel them all. Even though he had broken the rules, with this many people supporting his actions, there was no way Elder son could punish him. At this critical moment, they had all chosen to stand by Long Chen. Are you all planning on rebelling? Elder son raged. They were completely forcing the monastery in this manner. If this continued, he really would be unable to punish Long Chen. Suddenly a voice rang out that filled the entire sky. Let me handle this matter. Chapter 199 Exiled. Suddenly a middle-aged man appeared in front of them. No one was able to see how he had appeared. Greetings, sect leader. Elder son was given a fright and hastily bowed. Following him, the others also quickly bowed. All the new disciples were shocked. This was their Xiantian monastery's sect leader, a top expert of legends. Long Chen's heart was also moved. Looking at Ling Yunzi, he was shocked to find that although he was standing right there, his spiritual strength was unable to feel his presence. That was like he was just an empty image. He was unable to sense his cultivation base. It was like he had already merged with all of heaven and earth. What a terrifying cultivation base! Long Chen was completely shocked. Of all the experts he had ever seen, other than that spirit world's forest divinity, Ling Yunzi was definitely the strongest. Ling Yunzi nodded. Looking over everyone, he smiled. Your actions just now are useless. The monastery's rules were set by the ancestors and cannot be changed. Even I am unable to change them. If you think you can threaten the monastery like this, you are wrong. Even if you all leave the monastery's rules cannot be changed. Tang Wan'er and the others' expressions all changed. Even the sect leader was unable to change the rules. Then didn't that mean that it was already set in stone that Long Chen would be expelled? Long Chen looked at the people supporting him. I appreciate all your good intentions, but I will accept the consequences of my own actions. And there's no need to be so sad. It's not like I'm dying. Even if I won't be in the Xiantian monastery, I'll still grow on my own. Long Chen, Tang Wan'er's voice shuddered. Long Chen waved his hand, cutting her off. We're all no longer children. Don't let your emotions control you. You all had your own reasons for coming to the monastery, so don't mess around like an angry kid. Tears covered Tang Wan'er's face as she lightly sobbed. The others also found this unacceptable, but now it seemed Long Chen would definitely be expelled. As for the distant Gu Yang and then, they naturally sneered. Elder Sun also sighed in relief. If Long Chen wasn't expelled, he wouldn't be able to carry out his scheme. Admiration appeared in Ling Yunzi's eyes as he looked at Long Chen. In accordance to the monastery's rules, Long Chen, you have two options. One is to be expelled, and the other is to be exiled. Exiled? Long Chen was startled, never having heard of this second option. Correct. The monastery's rules are favored towards the strong, so there is still a chance for you to stay in the monastery. It is up to you, said Ling Yunzi. I suppose this exile is not something so simple, am I right? Asked Long Chen. Of course. This so-called exile is for core disciples who have violated the rules. They will be sent to a rubble wasteland tens of thousands of miles from the monastery. Let me warn you, that is the territory of third-rank magical beasts. There are even fourth-rank magical beasts there, solemnly explained Ling Yunzi. Everyone's heart shook. Third-rank magical beasts? Wasn't that just forfeiting their lives? And you might even encounter a fourth-rank magical beast? Just how many people were even capable of defeating third-rank magical beasts? Fourth-rank magical beasts were on the same level as the bone-forging elders. Wasn't choosing exile just choosing death? At least if you were expelled you could keep your life. If you were exiled there was no way you could survive. Has there ever been anyone who has chosen exile? Long Chen asked after a moment of thought. There has. Ever since the monastery was established, there has been a total of 173 people who have chosen exile, answered Ling Yunzi. Then how many people succeeded? Long Chen was more concerned with the pass rate. It's very regretful, but not one has ever returned alive. What? Everyone beside Long Chen let out a startled exclamation. So in thousands of years, there were over 100 core disciples who had chosen exile, and not one of them had returned alive. That was not a slim chance, but essentially no chance. Long Chen, don't do it. That's just a path to death, urged Tang Wan. Long Chen smiled and consoled her, don't worry. Turning to Ling Yunzi, he said, many thanks, sect leader. Disciple chooses exile. Everyone was stunned. Was Long Chen really a madman? That was clearly a road to death. But then thinking about everything Long Chen had done in the monastery, it seemed he had never done anything the normal way. He dared take action in a fighting forbidden region, fighting with law enforcers, cursing an elder. Were those things a normal person would do? Ah, good. Return and make your preparations. 3 days later, you will be exiled to that rubble wasteland. Ling Yunzi laughed and his body faded away just like in front of everyone's eyes. It was just like when he had arrived. No one could see how he left. Elder Sun then announced the rankings. Gu Yang's faction was originally number 2, but after stealing their flags, he had immediately became number 1. Second and third place were Lei Qianshang and Qi Xian's factions. The two of them had evenly split Yi Zhiqiu's faction's flags. As for fourth place, that went to the last person who had awakened his ancestral mark, Guan Wenan. Other than these top 4, the other factions possessed pitifully few flags. Some didn't even have more than 10. Those who were tied in terms of flags were ranked in accordance to how many of their members were still standing at this point. As for Tang Wan'er and Yi Zhiqiu's factions, they didn't have a single flag, so they naturally ranked last. As for who was last or second last, naturally it was insignificant. After that declaration, a large group of Healing Hall disciples came over to help everyone recover. Long Chen also saw several familiar faces. Oh, aren't you that kind brother? Here, let me heal you. One maiden suddenly saw Guoran and hastily ran over to him, healing his wounds. There were also quite a few others who came to feed him medicines, circulating their spiritual qi to also heal him. Those maidens all possessed a trace of wood energy, and under their assistance, Guoran's pain was alleviated greatly. Thank you all, thanked Guoran. No need to thank us. It should be us who thanks you. Last time if you and that brother hadn't come, we'd all have been ousted. Now I finally have a chance to repay you," excitedly explained one of them. Guoran smiled bitterly. "Perhaps in the future you'll often have a chance to repay me." Those maidens seemed to have not heard what his actual meaning was. After healing his bones and using their spiritual qi to help him recover, his body was already greatly healed. They told him not to use too much force for the next 3 days. Afterwards he should basically be fine, and he should be fully healed after 10 days. Although these girls were somewhat amateurish, their spiritual qi was extremely suited for healing. This recovery speed was extremely quick. Looking at everyone that was covered with wounds, those girls' eyes lit up excitedly, causing everyone to shiver. Everyone understood they were seeing their injuries as experiments. But still, that was mutually beneficial for both sides. They could fight as intensely as they wanted without being afraid of being wounded. And these maidens could heal their wounds to accumulate more experience, raising the entire capability of the healing hall. "Brother Longchen, let me give you a checkup." One maiden shyly came up to Longchen. She was very bashful, and Longchen still remembered how she and the rest of them had used him and Guoran as a tool for experimentation. His arm still remembered that stinging pain. And it was this girl who had contributed the most to that pain. Back then she had been so nervous she had almost cried. Longchen actually had to continuously console and encourage her before she finally managed to perfect her technique. Longchen smiled and was about to refuse when a cold shout suddenly rang out. "A person about to die doesn't need an examination. Do you not have anything else to do?" At some unknown time, Lu Chuan had walked over, disdainfully looking down on Longchen. That maiden angrily retorted, "Brother Long will be fine. Senior apprentice brother Lu Chuan, don't talk nonsense." What kind of joke is that? That wasteland has been called the graveyard of the exiled. In this long of a time, there hasn't been a single exile to walk out of there alive. Right now he's basically already dead. Don't waste time on a corpse. "I order you to go heal other people's injuries," shouted Lu Chuan. He was the leader of this group from the healing hall. These new disciples were all under his direction, so he had the authority to order them. That's nonsense. Brother Long is a good person. He'll return alive." That girl's eyes reddened and a tear rolled out. She stubbornly refused to leave. "How brazen! You dare ignore my orders? Do you believe me when I say I will kick you out of the healing hall?" Raged Lu Chuan. He hadn't expected a shy little girl like her would dare defy him. Longchen walked up a step and said to Lu Chuan, "Looks like you forget yourself as soon as the scar fades. Do you believe me when I say that at the distance, cutting off your head is as easy as turning my hand?" Lu Chuan was appalled and couldn't help taking a step back. If someone else said that he would have just snorted disdainfully. But when it came to Longchen, it didn't seem there was anything in the world that Longchen didn't dare do. Now being glared at by Longchen, his hair immediately stood on end and sweat trickled down his back. He felt as if a blade was already being pressed against his neck. "Did you know, even if I kill you, there won't be any punishment? I'll still just be sent to that exile place." Longchen icily stared at Lu Chuan. Lu Chuan gulped. Being stared at by Longchen was like being stared at by the Grim Reaper. Sweat dripped from his forehead and his face was pale as paper. He was absolutely terrified. "If I return alive and hear that you've purposely made things hard on this junior sister, I will cut your head off to use as stool." After saying that, Longchen turned to the girl and gently said, "I don't need any healing. Study well. I believe you'll become a true expert of the healing hall one day." Longchen was disinclined to bother any further with Lu Chuan. He departed with Tang Wan-er and them. Returning to their immortal cave, Longchen told Tang Wan-er, "These 3 days are extremely important. I'll give you a list of medicinal ingredients. You and Jiqiu use all your points to exchange for them." Tang Wan-er had no choice but to go to Jiqiu, because her own points were unable to buy all of them. Chapter 200 Graveyard of the Exiled. 3 days later, Long Chen walked out of his immortal cave exhausted. He saw that outside the immortal cave, his entire faction had gathered to send him off. And it wasn't just his people, but also Yi Zhiqiu's faction had come as well. Li Qi, Song Mingyuan, and 5 other core disciples had also come over. They had all expressed their support of Long Chen on that day. But unfortunately their support hadn't changed the monastery's decision. But in any case, they were still filled with respect for Long Chen. His strength wasn't necessarily the strongest, but he always dared to resist the rules, dared to confront enemies, and dared to face any hardships without any fear. "Oh, how lively, did you all come here to send me off?" laughed Long Chen. "You really are my good brothers, my good sisters. But you guys look a bit too unpresentable. Where are the streamers and ribbons? If you waved those around while cheering my name, that'd definitely be grander." Everyone saw that Long Chen appeared completely exhausted. They assumed he had begun to feel the pressure of being exiled. But no one ridiculed him. After all, that was a path of definite death. For him to even dare to choose that path already proved his bravery. Most amazing of all, though, was that Long Chen didn't appear to feel the slightest despair or fear. He actually could still joke around with everyone at such a time. Tang Wan'er walked over to Long Chen. Her tears streamed down before she could even say anything. Long Chen laughed. "You can't cry in the future. I've already said I'd make anyone who made you cry bleed. Do you want me to stab myself?" Tang Wan wanted to laugh, but she was unable to. A painful feeling filled her heart, but she didn't even know what feeling that was. She had a mountain of things she wanted to say, but at this moment, she was unable to say anything. "Don't worry. Who do you think I, Long Chen, am? As a huge scoundrel, I have a sturdy life that will survive any disasters. I'll be fine." Long Chen consoled Tang Wan'er when he saw her continue to cry. "Stay safe." Tang Wan'er looked at Long Chen through her tears. "I promise I'll return alive." Long Chen solemnly extended a hand. "Okay, then I'll trust you. But if you break your promise, I'll hate you for a lifetime." Tang Wan'er clasped hands with Long Chen. Long Chen's promise calmed her down a great deal. She knew Long Chen was someone who kept his promises. At this time Qing Yu walked over and gently tidied up his collar. "You have to be careful this time. You can't be negligent or careless at all. Do you understand?" In front of Qing Yu's older sister-like love, Long Chen's heart soured slightly. But he suppressed his own emotions and nodded. "Boss, you must definitely return. We'll all go take revenge together." Guoran also came up, reluctant to part with him. Long Chen patted him on the shoulders. "Good brother, I'll definitely return. When I do, we'll properly go settle our debt with them. I still have something to tell you. You possess an expert's Dao heart, and you obviously understand what it truly means to protect something. But your talent isn't all that high. So in the future you'll suffer greatly. If you really want to become a true expert, you need to blaze a new cultivation path." Guoran nodded, understanding what Long Chen meant. He possessed no advantage by just cultivating normally. He needed to find an unorthodox method to break through of his current self. Suddenly the sky darkened and a huge hawk eagle flew over, descending to the ground. It was over 50 meters long and gave everyone there an intense pressure. It was a powerful third-rank magical beast. There was an elder standing atop the hawk eagle. He said to Long Chen, "The time has arrived. Say your final goodbye to your friends." Long Chen shook his head and smiled slightly. Jumping atop the hawk eagle, he said, "There's no need for farewells. We will see each other again." Looking at his brothers and sisters, he shouted, "Okay, everyone return and work hard to cultivate. I'm going to have a little stroll." That elder patted the hawk eagle and it spread its wings, releasing a powerful astral wind as it soared into the sky. It disappeared from people's vision in an instant. Seeing that figure disappear, everyone said their own farewells and returned to their factions. Now that the gap had been pulled open, if they didn't cultivate as hard as they could, the gap would only grow wider. Tang Wan'er returned to her immortal cave. Atop the table were countless bottles and jars as well as a piece of paper. The paper told Tang Wanner that the name of these medicinal pills was the muscle-nourishing pill. It was a medicinal pill for use at the early stage of muscle rebirth. It would allow spiritual qi to nourish the muscles faster, increasing one's cultivation speed. She looked from the words on the page to the bottles of medicinal pills. That was the result of Long Chen refining for 3 days and nights. Tang Wanner could no longer hold back and all, bursting into tears. Qing Yu walked over and patted her on the shoulders, consoling her. Long Chen will definitely return. He refined these medicinal pills for us because he was afraid we wouldn't have enough points to keep up with the others while he's gone. So what you need to do now is to distribute these medicinal pills to everyone. You and Yijiqiu also need to quickly increase your own strength. Tang Wanner wiped away her tears and nodded. Sister Qingyu, I know. I'll get stronger. I have a debt to settle with those bastards. Within an elder's immortal cave, a young disciple was standing before Elder Sun. From his robes, he seemed like a law enforcer, one of Long Chen's senior apprentice brothers. Jiang Hao, did you remember everything I told you? First is to bring back Long Chen's spatial ring, and the other thing is to capture his soul in this soul-locking pearl. You mustn't forget, solemnly warned Elder Sun. Disciples understands, that person respectfully bowed. Although you are already an expert in the mid-muscle rebirth realm, that doesn't mean anything in the rubble wasteland. There are countless third-rank magical beasts, and there are even fourth-rank magical beasts. I'll give you 2 aura-concealing pills. Once you take it, as long as you don't intentionally release your aura, no magical beasts will be able to sense you. Take one on the way there, handle Long Chen, and take another one on the way back. Remember, you can't leak any news of this at all, once more solemnly warned Elder Sun. Yes, disciple understands. Once you accomplish this, I'll personally help you break through to the late muscle rebirth realm. Many thanks, Elder. That person was delighted, hastily bowing once more before leaving. Seeing that person disappear, Elder Sun smiled sinisterly. Long Chen, just how are you planning on escaping now? Sitting atop the flying magical beast, Long Chen realized they were flying straight north. All kinds of arduous lands passed beneath them. High mountains, thick forests, deep winding gorges. Do you have any regrets? That elder was the first to open his mouth. No. Even if I had to do it again, I'd do it the same. Long Chen shook his head. He knew that he was also helpless about this. That elder ruefully looked at Long Chen. Young people really have it the best. Looking at you, I'm reminded of myself when I joined the monastery. 60 years passed in an instant. My sharpness has long since been grinded away. Elder, can you help me do something? Seeing that this elder was so amicable, he had an idea. Hey, we're just chatting. I can't help you cheat. That elder immediately became on guard. He thought Long Chen would want him to send him somewhere else. In any case, no one else would know. Once Long Chen returned to the monastery afterwards, his exile would be over. Elder has misunderstood my meaning. I don't want you to help me cheat, but after we arrive at the rubble wasteland, can you help me kill a third-rank magical beast? Asked Long Chen. Oh, that's no problem at all, promised that elder. This journey is very far. It will probably take a whole day. You should first rest during this time, he reminded Long Chen. Long Chen nodded. He really was tired from having refined pills for 3 days straight. If he were to enter that kind of dangerous wasteland in that kind of state, that would definitely not be a good thing. He needed to recover first. His huge divine ring appeared behind him, beginning to absorb energy. At this point, his divine ring was no longer any secret, so he didn't need to have any misgivings about that. But that hawk eagle was given a fright once Long Chen summoned his divine ring. It only calmed down once the elder consoled it. It went without saying that the divine ring's power was amazing. In just 6 hours, Long Chen's spiritual qi was completely recovered. When he once more opened his eyes, he saw the scenery around him had completely changed. The ground had leveled out, and occasionally he could see some wild beasts roaming around. He also saw quite a few vicious magical beasts from the air. A huge, fierce tiger with brightly colored fur, a serpent that was even thicker than a water jar, all kinds of magical beasts appeared. Some magical beasts let out an angry roar when they saw the hawk eagle fly above them. Obviously that was a warning. Long Chen let out a startled cry at how terrifying these magical beasts were. It was no wonder that not one exile had managed to walk back to the monastery from here. Who knew just how many years these magical beasts had lived for? Their auras were many times stronger than Little Snow's. That was because Little Snow had only just reached the 3rd rank. He couldn't even count as having reached the early stage, but he still possessed such terrifying power. As for these magical beasts that had controlled their domains for many, many years, they had long since reached the mid-stage, or some even the late stage. Their power was incomparable. Let alone Long Chen, who was only in the blood condensation realm, even a middle muscle rebirth expert wouldn't necessarily be able to walk out alive. Furthermore, it was reported that those core disciples that had previously been exiled here had all been in the muscle rebirth realm. But even so, every single one of them had died here. But Long Chen had chosen exile because he had no other choice. These countless 3rd-rank magical beasts would allow him to gather magical beast essence blood. It was an excellent place for him to make 10,000 beast essence blood. In the past 3 days, he had not only refined the muscle-nourishing pills, but also the medicinal powders required for the 10,000 beast essence blood. Everything was arranged for him. All he needed was magical beast essence blood and he'd be able to make it, allowing him to quickly increase his cultivation base. That was the reason he had chosen exile. This was the only way for him to quickly increase his cultivation base. Otherwise he would forever be unable to catch up. At dawn the next day, they arrived at a huge wasteland. Huge rugged stone mountains littered this land. A gloomy, sinister scent filled this place. They had arrived at the rubble wasteland, the graveyard of the exiled. Chapter 201 Shadow Devil Leopard. Long Chen, this is the rubble wasteland. I'm only in charge of sending you here. Everything else will be up to you. I hope you can return to the monastery alive. That elder patted Long Chen on the shoulders and jumped back onto the hawk eagle, flying back to the monastery. This wasteland was tens upon thousands of miles wide. Huge ragged stone mountains were the only things that stood out in this wasteland. The unbroken weeds that covered the land made it appear exceptionally desolate. From the bottom of a huge stone mountain, Long Chen watched as that elder left. He was still extremely grateful to him. Beside Long Chen was a silver-colored centipede. It was completely motionless, already having been cut in two. That elder had done that for him. This area was this silver centipede's territory. Having killed the silver centipede, this place should be relatively safe for a while. That elder had clearly taken special care of Long Chen by killing this silver centipede for him. It was an overlord at the peak of the mid-3rd rank, making it very powerful. Few magical beasts would dare to intrude upon its territory. So Long Chen had enough time to probe his surroundings. Walking over to the centipede's corpse, he used a blade to pry open its head and took out its 2 huge poison sacs. Other than the silver centipede's hard shell, the most terrifying part about it was its toxicity. The poison mist it could spit out would immediately cover an area of at least a mile, and most frightening of all, that poison possessed an extremely powerful corrosive strength. Other than crustacean magical beasts, almost nothing else was able to resist that corrosion. After taking out the 2 poison sacs, Long Chen also took out a large bucket and began to collect the silver centipede's essence blood. Unfortunately for him, this silver centipede didn't possess very much blood essence. Long Chen only managed to collect under than 50 kilograms. Although that wasn't much, Long Chen was already satisfied since his main goal had been its poison. He had searched for it for a long time before pointing it out to that elder. The elder had merely slashed with his sword, sending a ray of sword chi that had easily killed that powerful silver centipede. Upon seeing that kind of strength, Long Chen had been extremely envious. He gathered all its essence blood into his bucket, but in actuality, that still wasn't true essence blood. He still needed to process it further. Taking out a medicinal pill, he threw it into the bucket. The blood inside the bucket immediately began to boil with countless bubbles popping up. Vapor streamed into the air, releasing an unpleasant smell. But the poison within the silver centipede's essence blood wasn't very strong, and so all it would do is cause someone to be a bit dizzy. Just consuming a simple detox pill was fine. It took an hour for the essence blood to stop boiling. Once there was no more steam coming out of it, the blood had become much more viscous. Hee, it's good now. Long Chen smiled and took out a bag that was filled with medicinal powders. Those were the ingredients of the secret formula he had refined prior to coming here, the Xiantian Monastery's secret 10,000 beast essence blood formula. When the medicinal powder fell into the essence blood, a crackling sound came from the bucket. The scent of blood became even denser. Long Chen knew that was the effect of the medicinal powder. It would invigorate the essence blood's life energy. 2 hours later, the blood once more stilled. Time to begin. Long Chen took a deep breath. Although he was very confident in his pill god memories, he was still a bit nervous about this 10,000 beast essence blood that he had manufactured himself. I must succeed, so I'm relying on you. If this fails, I really will die here. Long Chen said a prayer and then stuck his hand into the bucket. His spiritual qi began to crazily absorb the essence blood. He was like a whale absorbing water. All the essence blood in the bucket immediately disappeared into his body, beginning to crazily transform. Haha, it's the exact same effect. Long Chen was absolutely delighted and relieved. The 10,000 beast essence blood he had created was the exact same as the monastery's. He had succeeded in replicating the formula. After expelling the impurities from the essence blood, all the rest in the essence blood was completely activated essence that he devoured. Long Chen had only just reached the 7th heaven stage of blood condensation. According to his normal cultivation speed, he would have required at least another 2 months before his blood reached saturation again. But with this method, Long Chen's cultivation speed would greatly increase. As long as there was enough 10,000 beast essence blood, he could continuously advance straight through to the muscle rebirth realm. Long Chen let out a breath, sensing the blood inside his body. He smiled. Hee, this 1 bucket of essence blood was equivalent to half a month's cultivation. That filled Long Chen with excitement. This would greatly cut down on his time between advancements, saving him precious time. After absorbing it all, he found a huge cave at the bottom of the stone mountain. That was naturally the old lair of the silver centipede. Now it became Long Chen's habitat. He knew that a 3rd-rank magical beast territory would be extremely large. Most likely there would not be a single other magical beast within dozens of miles. He could definitely live here safely for now. Luckily this cave was rather clean without so much excrement. It appeared the silver centipede preferred a cleaner environment. After walking into the cave, Long Chen first set up a tent. That was something he had taken from that person who had tried to rob him on his way to the monastery. He had already thrown out all those mattresses and bedding he had, but he had kept this luxurious tent. After tidying up and resting for a bit, Long Chen looked up at the sky. It was currently noon. He set up a large pot outside. He placed one of the silver centipede's poison sacs into the iron pot. A corrosive smell immediately filled the air. Just smelling caused him to feel like his respiratory tract was being corroded. Tightly holding his nose, Long Chen lit a fire beneath the pot. He also placed over 100 arrowheads into the poison before quickly backing away. He only began breathing again once he was a mile away. The silver centipede's poison really was too terrifying. But he had already prepared enough wood under the pan to keep the fire burning for a long time. As the arrowheads simmered within the poison, they would easily begin to absorb that poison. At this moment he didn't need to do anything. All he needed to do was quietly wait here. He currently didn't dare go exploring further. All the land bordering his little territory had to be controlled by at least a 3rd-rank magical beast. The current him wouldn't even have a good chance of defeating an early 3rd-rank magical beast. And if he ran into a mid-3rd-rank magical beast, then it wouldn't be about his probability of beating it, but the probability he could flee. By the time the fire burned away all its fuel 4 hours later, the poison had already all boiled away. A disgusting smell still lingered in the air. He had over 100 poisonous arrowheads now that had been dyed black by the poison. Long Chen had only just picked one up when suddenly the entire pot exploded, giving Long Chen a fright. He hastily jumped away. If he ended up pricked by one of these poison arrows, there really was a possibility he could die. That silver centipede's poison was just too powerful. That iron pot had been corroded to the point that it was now as weak as glass. Long Chen excitedly stared at those pitch-black arrowheads. With these poison arrows, he would be much more confident in killing third-rank magical beasts. Seeing that the sky was already starting to darken, Long Chen returned to his tent to rest. He didn't even feel like cultivating. He set up a couple traps around with the poison arrows and then slept. The next day, Long Chen collected his traps and carefully began traveling south. Having just flown over this area on top of the Hawk Eagle yesterday, he still remembered there was a third-rank magical beast here, the Shadow Devil Leopard. The third-rank Shadow Devil Leopard's speed was incomparably fast and it was exceptionally fierce. But unlike other magical beast leopards, it preferred to hunt during the day. Magical beasts weren't like humans. They didn't need to cultivate. They used flesh and blood to increase their own cultivation power. As for the Shadow Devil Tiger, its most terrifying aspect was how it could almost completely camouflage itself. Although it was a furred magical beast, its fur could actually change color in accordance to its surroundings. If it was hiding within some grass or against some rocks, it was practically impossible to see it. Sometimes magical beasts would walk right past it without knowing they had walked right in front of death. After traveling over 50 miles, Long Chen slowed down. This was around where it had been. Spreading out his divine sense, Long Chen noticed a lazy figure sunning on top of some rocks. Resting on those stones, its color had become the exact same as that of the rocks. If Long Chen hadn't noticed it yesterday jump out of some rocks to roar at them in warning, he really wouldn't have imagined a magical beast would be able to camouflage itself so well. This distance should be about right. Long Chen looked around. There was a natural pathway here. It was a perfect place to set up a trap. Originally Long Chen had been planning on digging some pitfalls, but thinking of how powerful the Shadow Devil Leopard's body was, he decided against it. The odds of that working were too low, and it was also too much work to dig here. He then considered making a trigger trap like the one he had used against Ding Ho. But then he still shook his head. That kind of trap would require him to lure the Shadow Devil Leopard. If he was careless, he might trigger his own trap. Perhaps in his death even the Shadow Devil Leopard would laugh at him. After pondering over it for a long time, Long Chen took out 6 longbows, setting up 6 spots along the path from which they could shoot a poison arrow. Fully knocking the bows, Long Chen placed a dagger on the bowstring to prevent it from shooting. As long as that dagger was moved even the slightest, the bow would immediately shoot out its poison arrow. All of the 6 bows were set to the sides of the small path. They were all less than a couple meters from each other. With its huge body that was over 20 meters long, the Shadow Devil Leopard would very likely be hit if it walked here and all 6 arrows were shot at once. As long as one arrow hit, that would sharply decrease its power. Then he could kill it much easier. Once more going over the 6 bows and confirming everything was perfect, Long Chen slowly crept over to the Shadow Devil Leopard. When he was 2 miles from it, he stopped. If he got any closer, then would put it on guard. After weighing an egg-sized stone for a bit, he then used his full strength to throw it at the Shadow Devil Leopard's head. Chapter 202 Absorbing Essence Blood. Long Chen's arm was definitely strong. That stone whistled through the air before it smashed into the Shadow Devil Leopard's head. It had just been leisurely soaking in the sun's rays on that huge stone and hadn't been wary at all, causing it to be struck head-on. The powerful force behind his throw caused it to tumble back, a large bump appearing on its head. The Shadow Devil Leopard immediately let out an earth-shattering roar and jumped up, looking around. "Damn, what a hard head!" Long Chen exclaimed inside. A mid-third rank magical beast really was too terrifying. His full-strength strike had been completely useless. Looking around, the Shadow Devil Leopard quickly noticed Long Chen. Within an area of several miles, the only living thing present was Long Chen, so it was easy to tell who the attacker was. Letting out another roar, it quickly charged at Long Chen. Its speed was so fast that it left behind many afterimages as it traveled, almost seeming like a phantom. Crap, I misjudged the distance. Long Chen cursed inside when he saw how fast it was. With that kind of speed, he really was a bit too far from his trap. Long Chen immediately scampered away at his full speed. He pushed his footwork to the max as he fled towards his trap. But the Shadow Devil Leopard's speed was just too fast. Long Chen was still a mile away from his trap when it caught up to him. Damn it, 4 legs really are better than 2. Long Chen cursed and flung out a blue-colored ball of pill flame at it. The blue flame exploded loudly, giving the Shadow Devil Leopard a fright, causing it to instinctively pause for a moment. That gave Long Chen a chance to breathe as he continued fleeing. But then the Shadow Devil Leopard once more roared and chased after him, this time its speed increasing even further. Long Chen knew most furred magical beasts feared fire. He was afraid if he used his blue flame, that would cause the Shadow Devil Leopard to go on guard. That was why he had used his pill flame as simply an explosive. It was loud, but its power had been weak. It only had the effect of giving it a fright. Seeing he was approaching his trap, Long Chen was relieved. Quickly rushing over, he pushed his spiritual strength to its max, focusing on those daggers. An even larger ball of flame appeared in his hand at this time. When he stepped past the range of the trap, he threw out that large ball of flame. A huge explosion rocked the world as the blue flame immediately exploded to become 40 meters in diameter, waves of heat surging out of it. The Shadow Devil Leopard instinctively slowed in front of this blue flame. It was precisely that moment that Long Chen used his spiritual strength to release those daggers from the bows. 6 arrows shot out like lightning, flying right at the Shadow Devil Leopard. Its body was so huge that all 6 arrows hit. Normally, such an ordinary arrow would have difficulty breaking through the defense of a 3rd-rank magical beast. But even 3rd-rank magical beasts had weak spots in their defense. Its weak spot was its abdomen. Its defensive strength was relatively weaker there, so naturally Long Chen had set up his arrows to strike there. But despite that being its weakest spot, the 6 arrows only lightly pierced the skin, not even sinking an inch in. That kind of injury was basically nothing to a 3rd-rank magical beast. But it was already enough for Long Chen. After those arrows pierced its body, Long Chen could see with his naked eye that its flesh was turning black. That was the effect of the intense poison's corrosion. Feeling the acute pain on its abdomen, the Shadow Devil Leopard angrily roared and charged at Long Chen. Long Chen summoned his divine ring as well as his Feng Fu battle armor. A flame blade appeared in his hands, slashing down on the it. Boom! When the flame blade slashed onto the Shadow Devil Leopard, a terrifying energy sent all the surrounding rocks flying. All the withered grass hundreds of meters around them ignited. Long Chen felt a berserk energy send him flying. He only stabilized himself dozens of meters away. A charred mark had been left on the Shadow Devil Leopard, but it clearly wasn't a heavy injury. How powerful! Long Chen was startled. Furred magical beasts were innately suppressed by fire, but his blue flame salamander flame was unable to cause it any harm. That didn't mean that the flame salamander's blue flame was weak, but that his own cultivation base was just too low. His pill flame would get stronger in accordance with the quality of his spiritual qi. In terms of capacity, Long Chen possessed just as much spiritual qi as a muscle rebirth expert, perhaps even more. But before entering the muscle rebirth realm, his spiritual qi's quality would be far too lacking. That was like trying to compare cotton thread to a steel wire. No matter how much thread you had, it wouldn't be able to reach a steel wire's strength. And so Long Chen suffered greatly due to his realm. If Long Chen also stepped into the muscle rebirth realm, his blue flame would definitely be able to heavily injure the Shadow Devil Leopard. But the Shadow Devil Leopard suddenly opened its mouth. A black ball slowly appeared and a terrifying pressure locked Long Chen in place. An inherited skill. Long Chen was shocked. That was just like little Snow. He knew these inherited skills were battle skills transmitted down from the bloodline and were extremely terrifying. When that black ball had first appeared, it had only been the size of a watermelon, but in just the blink of an eye, it grew several meters wide. Terrifying pressure caused even the space around it to be crushed. Suddenly space shook as that black ball shot straight at Long Chen. Split the heavens. Long Chen didn't reserve anything, striking with his full force. The flame blade in his hands explosively grew and slashed down on that ball. Boom! Long Chen's flame blade burst apart and he felt as if he had been smashed by a mountain. He was thrown into the air, vomiting blood. Crashing into a huge mountain, Long Chen once more spat out more blood, sensing that many of his bones were about to break. He was completely horrified. This shadow devil leopard was too powerful. Who could possibly resist such power? It was no wonder this place had been called the graveyard of the exiled. At this moment he finally understood why none of the many peak geniuses had managed to walk out of this place alive. He really had underestimated this place. If a mid-third rank magical beast was already too powerful, then just how strong was the late third rank? And even fourth rank magical beasts? When the dust settled, the shadow devil leopard once more roared. Its fur was completely charred black and deep cut had opened on its body from which Long Chen could even see bone. Obviously Long Chen's attack just now had dealt a mortal blow to it. If Long Chen could once more use Split the Heavens a couple more times, he would definitely be able to kill it. But he wasn't even able to use one more time. The consumption of his Feng Fu battle armor was too terrifying. Using one attack in that state was already his limit. Looking at the infuriated eyes of the shadow devil leopard, Long Chen fled without even thinking about it. Since he still had some energy, he really had to flee while he could. The shadow devil leopard angrily chased after him, but its current speed had sharply dropped. Previously it had been faster than Long Chen, but now its speed was the same as his. Long Chen knew that its speed had dropped not only because of that injury he had caused it, but also because of the poison's corrosion. That was an excellent sign for him. As he fled, the shadow devil leopard chased as fast as it could, but its speed was gradually becoming even slower. Long Chen didn't dare be careless. Seeing it slow down, he also slowed down along with it, maintaining the same distance in order to let it think it might catch him if it worked just a bit harder. In that manner, Long Chen brought it running in a circle around its territory. He didn't dare run out of the area of the silver centipede or its territory. If he attracted more magical beasts, that would definitely be a disaster. In this manner he fled for almost a whole hour. The shadow devil leopard was finally reaching its end. It was already limping and staggering, but it still continued to chase. Long Chen was already tired to death, feeling as if he was also almost out of energy. That previous attack had almost broken all his bones. After this kind of run, he really was about to collapse. Pain radiated from all over, but he could only clench his teeth and continue. Finally, the shadow devil leopard collapsed to the ground. Seeing that, Long Chen also sat down. Consuming a chi recovery pill, he focused on recovering energy. But he also didn't forget to keep track of his surroundings. After all, in this kind of vicious wasteland, he might die at any moment. He didn't dare be careless. If he hadn't set up that trap and had those poison arrows hit, it really would have been a crazy dream for him to kill the shadow devil leopard. Long Chen felt even more grateful to that elder. If it weren't for him, it would have taken him forever just to kill a second-rank magical beast. The elder's help had allowed him to save a great deal of time. It had actually been a covert way of helping Long Chen cheat in a way. Long Chen noticed that its breath had already stopped 2 hours later, but in any case, he just let it lie there dead for a bit longer. Long Chen waited for a full 6 hours. He had recovered to about 70 or 80% at this point. Only then did he carefully approach the shadow devil leopard. After using his blue flame to test a couple sensitive places and seeing that there was no reaction, he finally was sure that it really was dead. In front of this huge shadow devil leopard, he felt extremely tiny. Jumping onto its head, he first cut out its crystal core. He then took out a wooden cask and began to collect its essence blood. Its body was extremely huge, so there was a great deal of blood. When all the blood had been collected, there were a total of 3 large barrels of essence blood. However, all this blood was slightly black because of the poison. Long Chen took out a fist-sized crystal core and threw it into the barrel. Less than an hour later, the blood had already become completely red again. Fishing up the crystal core, he saw that a couple black spots had appeared on its previously completely bright body. Using the silver centipede's crystal core to extract its own poison really is effective. The silver centipede's poison was actually very precious. That was because it was possible to kill prey with it and then reclaim the poison after. And the tool to reclaim the poison was precisely its crystal core. By absorbing the poison from the prey back into the crystal core, then turning it back into poison, he would be able to recycle it over and over. After purifying and extracting all the impurities from the essence blood, Long Chen threw the medicinal powder into the essence blood. Not long after, he had a whole barrel of 10,000 beast essence blood. Time to reap my harvest. Long Chen put his hand into the barrel. The enormous amount of essence blood was crazily absorbed into his body. Chapter 203 Slaughter You. As he absorbed the magical beast essence blood, his blood energy continuously grew. 2 hours later, he had completely absorbed all the essence. Long Chen's blood had finally reached its saturated state. In other words, Long Chen could proceed with the next purification. Time to strike while the iron is still hot. Long Chen took a deep breath and his Feng Fu star's spiritual qi began to crazily circulate as he attempted to break through the next barrier. Long Chen's blood was boiling and surging, emitting a loud rumbling sound. It was like boiling underground magma. Endless energy was igniting. That pure energy was being sent through every nook of his body. Boom! Long Chen's aura exploded out. Stones flipped hundreds of meters through the air. A powerful qi wave shot out in every direction. Haha, I've finally reached the 8th heaven stage. Long Chen set out a delighted exclamation. Clenching his fist, he felt an endless energy surging out of him. In fact, he felt that he had so much energy that he would explode if he didn't use it. Breaking Wind Fist. Long Chen punched a boulder. That boulder that was several meters large was smashed into powder. My physical body's power has increased even further. It's almost frightening to even myself. Long Chen was incredibly excited. His physical body really was his most powerful aspect. He wouldn't be an expert focusing on battle skills. The most powerful aspect of the 9-star Hegemon body art was its ability to increase his physical body's power. It really was unfortunate that cultivating in it was so slow. Otherwise, there would basically be no need for him to even learn battle skills. No matter how his opponents came at him, he could just let out a single punch to crush them. The 9-star Hegemon body art's path focuses on the physical body. I can't waste time on battle skills or other things. I have to focus on it and my physical body. Having reached the 8th haven stage, Long Chen found his own physical strength had multiplied several times. Now he really understood what the Hegemon body, part of this technique's name, meant. Battle skills could make his attacks even sharper, but without his physical body as the foundation, they would all be useless no matter how powerful they were. It was just like Split the Heavens. Although he could now use it confidently without worry of a backlash, he found that as his cultivation base increased, Split the Heavens' power also increased greatly, becoming more and more terrifying. Other than its own power, that was also because Long Chen's physical body was growing stronger. That previous wind-breaking fist he had tested just now was essentially useless to the current him. Just his punches alone were comparable to Earth-class battle skills. That showed how powerful his physical body had become. Long Chen had confirmed the focus of his cultivation. He wouldn't waste his time chasing after powerful techniques of battle skills. It would be better to focus on increasing his cultivation base with the 9-star Hegemon body art. After reaching the 8th heaven stage, Long Chen rested for a day to become accustomed to his new strength. On the next day, he once more began searching for new targets. This rubble wasteland really was worthy of being called the graveyard of the exiled. Powerful third-rank magical beasts were everywhere. But Long Chen always picked his targets extremely carefully. First, he selected those defensively weaker furred magical beasts, not even considering targeting the scaled magical beasts. One reason was because Long Chen's arrows were unable to break through their defenses, but the other reason was that every scaled magical beast possessed a powerful resistance to poison. His poison arrows would basically be useless. Furthermore, the absolute majority of them were cold-blooded. They had more flesh but less essence blood, so it was simply not worth it. Long Chen was able to use his powerful spiritual strength to observe distant magical beasts. He prepared traps in advance and made meticulous plans. Although Long Chen had advanced to the 8th heaven stage and his physical body had become incomparably powerful, he didn't become egotistical at all. He never chose mid-third rank magical beasts again. This was no game. A mistake was death. Even if Long Chen was even bolder, he wouldn't treat his own life as a game. Ever since arriving at the rubble wasteland, he had completely broken the relative stability there. The angry roars of powerful magical beasts would occasionally ring out. Magical beast after magical beast disappeared. After another half a month, there were a total of 7 third-rank magical beasts who had fallen to his hands. But what appalled Long Chen was that after absorbing 7 more third-rank magical beasts' essence blood, his blood had still yet to reach saturation. He sensed that it had only reached around the halfway level. In other words, if he wanted to reach the 9th heaven stage, he would have to kill at least another 7 third-rank magical beasts. That kind of difficulty actually delighted him. That was because such a large increase in difficulty would always bring increased benefits as well. But at the moment he really needed to hurry up. He wasn't just one person in the world, he needed to return to everyone to get their revenge. His brother's blood definitely couldn't be bled for nothing. He also couldn't just let Tang Wan'er be so aggrieved for nothing. For those devoted brothers of the Heaven-Earth faction, he needed to return as early as possible. Otherwise, with Gu Yang, Lei Qianshang, and Qi Xian's contemptible natures, they would definitely suppress their growth as much as possible. He worried that Tang Wan'er and Yi Zhiqiu would be unable to handle that kind of oppression. But he really couldn't speed up at all. One reason was that he had to carefully select his magical beasts. He also had to set up traps and make a meticulous plan. But most importantly, Long Chen had to avoid late third-rank magical beasts at all costs. If he encountered one of them, he most likely wouldn't even have the chance to flee. Worrying only brought more worries, so thinking of all that was useless. He could only continue as he had. He had already killed almost all the magical beasts he was able to within an area of 100 miles. The rest were ones he couldn't defeat for sure. Long Chen could only start searching in further regions. He had just been carefully scouting when he saw a distant person. It was essentially inconceivable for there to be someone else in this graveyard of the exiled. Long Chen hastily hid himself. Stealthily observing that person, he saw that man was in his 20s. But most strange of all was that his body didn't have any aura at all. If he hadn't seen him with his eyes, even his spiritual strength would have found it hard to sense him. He's consumed an aura-concealing pill. Long Chen immediately saw through some clues. That person was looking all around. He then took out a jade plate and lightly pressed. Long Chen immediately felt heat on his waist. His disciple metal had let out a fluctuation. The moment that fluctuation came from his metal, that person immediately started rushing over in his direction. "Ah, Long Chen, you're still alive." That person was delighted, arriving in front of Long Chen in just a moment. Long Chen no longer had any thoughts of hiding himself anymore. He walked out openly, but he had an extremely bad feeling about this. "Who are you?" asked Long Chen. I'm Feng Hai, your senior apprentice brother. Elder Tu Feng sent me to protect you. Luckily you're still alive." That person laughed happily, hiding his sinister intentions. "Then I'll thank senior apprentice brother Feng." To tell the truth, I've been almost frightened to death these few days, smiled Long Chen. That's normal. Even I was terrified coming here. Come, let me bring you back. Feng Hai came over to help support him extremely naturally, but his aura had already begun to stealthily circulate. Long Chen had a thankful expression on without the slightest intention of denying his kindness. Senior apprentice brother Feng really is a good person. Feng Hai's smile became even more brilliant. He really hadn't expected to dupe Long Chen so easily. He had been previously worried Long Chen had already been eaten by a magical beast. Seeing he was so alive, as long as he subdued him, he could easily capture his spirit in the soul-locking pearl. Then his mission would have been accomplished perfectly. Feng Hai didn't have the slightest defense raised against Long Chen. Instead, ridicule filled his eyes in the moment his hand touched Long Chen's arm. The time had come to subdue him. But suddenly he heard a whistling from behind him. Feng Hai was completely shocked. Long Chen was clearly right in front of him, but there was an attack coming straight for his back. Giving up subduing him at this exact moment, he had to dodge to the side. But although he let go of Long Chen grabbed onto his arm, not letting him escape. Feng Hai looked at Long Chen's icy smile with alarm. He immediately realized Long Chen had long since seen through his intentions. Fuck off. He didn't even have time to look at what was coming for him from behind. But his intuition told him it possessed an extremely grave threat. His aura exploded out and he sent Long Chen flying. Although he did his best to dodge at the last moment, his shoulder was still scraped by an arrow, leaving a line of blood. He was completely startled and was about to furiously attack Long Chen when 3 more arrows shot at him. Unsheathing his long sword, he shot out a terrifying ray of sword chi that crushed those 3 arrows. You dare sneak attack people? Feng Hai furiously glared at Long Chen, no longer bothering to conceal anything. Long Chen brushed off some dust and spoke slowly for him. Do you think everyone in this world is as stupid as you? Elder Tu Feng is an extremely righteous and strict person. Do you think he'd send someone to save me? And if he did, why would he send you? Furthermore, that was the decision of the sect leader. Even an idiot would realize Elder Tu Feng wouldn't do this. If I haven't guessed wrongly, you came to kill me, and the person who sent you should be that old bastard's son. Feng Hai was first startled, but he then laughed. I wouldn't have thought you knew so much. But since you do, I also don't need to waste my time. Hand over your spatial ring. Long Chen shook his head and lightly asked, Why should I hand over my spatial ring? Are you going to let me live if I do? Nope. But I can promise to kill you a bit faster. You won't feel any pain. Feng Hai pointed his long sword at Long Chen. Long Chen nodded. That's reasonable. If I resist, you'll cut me into pieces. That'll definitely be miserable and painful. If I don't resist, I can just die in one go. What a good idea. But I have a better idea. What idea? Asked Feng Hai. But at that moment he suddenly sensed something was wrong. A rotting smell drifted into his nose. Long Chen smiled slightly. He had finally noticed? His aura exploded and a huge flame blade appeared in his hands. To slaughter you. Chapter 204 Sly Killer. Long Chen struck like lightning, his aura exploding out and a flame blade appearing in his hand which he slashed down on him. Feng Hai was completely startled. He saw that the tiny little nick on his shoulder had already turned black and he had lost feeling in his shoulder. The stink coming was what had finally alerted him that Long Chen's arrow had been coated with a terrifyingly powerful poison. He had just been stalling this entire time. Most frightening of all, that poison had spread completely silently. He hadn't even sensed it. If he hadn't smelled that rotting smell, he would still be clueless. Long Chen struck him in the midst of his confusion and fury. Without having even the time to examine his wound, he attacked with his long sword. Boom! What appalled Long Chen was that the moment his flame blade collided with that long sword, his flame blade directly broke down. Is this the strength of the mid-muscle rebirth realm? How powerful! Feng Hai didn't dare reserve anything at this point anymore. Using his full force, with one slash he destroyed Long Chen's flame blade, and now a second stab was piercing towards Long Chen. Pressure shot out of the sword, making it so Long Chen was unable to dodge. He could only receive it head-on. A green light enveloped the long sword, marking it as a powerful battle skill. Long Chen knew that he had to use his full strength at this moment. A mid-muscle rebirth realm expert was too terrifying. He immediately summoned his divine ring and his Feng Fu battle armor. He also brought out the blue flame in his body and condensed it into a huge blue blade. Runes fluctuated over it. When the flame blade collided with the longsword this time, Long Chen was forced back 100 meters, but his flame blade didn't collapse again. Each time his flame blade collapsed, it would require him to use up a great deal of his flame energy. Condensing a new flame blade used up a great deal of spiritual qi. Furthermore, this time Feng Hai also was forced back over 30 meters by Long Chen's full force strike. He could sense his physical power sharply dropping. That was the effect of the poison, and so he hastily swallowed an antitoxin pill. But he was horrified to realize that his antitoxin pill was unable to cure the poison and it continued to spread. Although it had slowed down a great deal, he wouldn't be able to endure it for long. Bastard, hand over the antidote. What are you talking about? Long Chen put his hand to his ear, acting as if he hadn't understood. If you hand over the antidote, I'll spare you life, angrily offered Feng Hai. You're lisping too much, I can't understand what you're saying. Can you talk a bit calmer? Bastard, you're asking for it. How could Feng Hai still not understand Long Chen was just purposely drawing out the time? He furiously brandished his long sword at Long Chen, trying to kill him. Long Chen's flame blade danced in the air. He mostly tried to avoid head-on strikes, borrowing his force to fall back. He was not a match for a mid-muscle rebirth expert. Split the Heavens was a final trump card. If he used it but was unable to kill Feng Hai, he would definitely die. Currently Feng Hai was already poisoned. As time passed, he would gain more and more of an advantage. Rather than taking a risk, it would be better to fight while delaying as much as possible. His chance of coming out on top would increase more that way. Long Chen fought and retreated at the same time, saving as much energy as possible. The two of them ended up traveling over 300 miles in this manner. Feng Hai roared, realizing the poison in his body had already invaded his organs. If he still didn't obtain the antidote, he would definitely die. Inside he cursed himself for trying to be clever at first. If he had attacked Long Chen right at the beginning, how could he have ended up in this state? If this continued, he would end up both failing his mission and dying. He really was frantic now. He took out a medicinal pill and threw it into his mouth. That pill immediately suppressed the poison. That was a kind of precious poison-suppressing pill. Its purpose wasn't to cure the poison, but to suppress the poison's eruption. That kind of suppression was like trying to hold a flood. As the water grew higher, the dam would eventually break. When that happened, the poison would erupt and he would immediately die. If he hadn't been forced to this point, Feng Hai would definitely not consume such a pill. Taking this poison-suppressing pill meant that if he couldn't obtain the antidote shortly, he would definitely die. But for the moment, he no longer needed to focus his energy on keeping the poison back and could fight with his full force. Die! Feng Hai roared and his speed exploded. He arrived in front of Long Chen in just the blink of an eye, slashing down with his sword. Long Chen was startled, hastily raising his flame blade. But this time, his flame blade completely broke down. Feng Hai's sword tip cut across his forehead, leaving behind a bloody cut. If he hadn't thrown his head back at that last moment, his head would have been cut in half. Long Chen took a deep breath and summoned all the spiritual qi he had been keeping in reserve, another flame blade appearing in his hands. Split the heavens! All of his energy poured into his sword. That huge flame blade slashed down in an unstoppable manner. Feng Hai's expression changed, obviously not expecting Long Chen to be able to release such a powerful attack. This attack actually gave him a feeling of mortal danger. Falling leaf slash. Feng Hai shouted, and his long sword once more lit up. A cold sword chi swept over Long Chen's flame blade. Boom! Space almost broke apart under that intense collision. Long Chen was sent flying back a whole mile under that terrifying force, vomiting out blood. The mid-muscle rebirth realm really is too powerful. That was the first time Long Chen felt such a powerlessness. He saw that his own attack had only forced Feng Hai back without causing any injuries. He once more charged back at him, pointing his long sword at him. Hand over the antidote and I'll spare you life. Long Chen almost rolled his eyes. It was already such a time, but he still said such idiot words. Would anyone possibly believe him? He was just about to mock him when he suddenly noticed that there was a large boulder behind Feng Hai. It was slowly beginning to move. Long Chen rejoiced inside. This time he had been saved, but he still put on a sensible expression. Unless you make an oath, I'll never hand over the antidote. Don't get any crafty ideas either. My storage ring is filled with thousands of medicinal pills. You'd be long dead before you could find the right antidote. Fine, I swear. If I renege my promise, let me die, hastily swore Feng Hai. Just now he really had been thinking of killing Long Chen and searching for the antidote, but he gave up that idea when he heard what Long Chen said. If that was true and he had that many medicinal pills, how could he possibly find the antidote? If he ate the wrong pills, wouldn't he die even faster? No, that oath isn't harsh enough. I require a poison oath. Long Chen shook his head. He saw that boulder behind Feng Hai had already slowly risen up and stealthily released 8 long hairy legs. Long Chen knew that to be the stony devil spider, a third-rank magical beast. It was a true master of concealment. It was covered in veined patterns that made it look just like a boulder, making it really appear like part of the background. Even walking right past it, it would be difficult to notice it. Most terrifying of all was its incredible patience. Sometimes it would hide for months or even years for prey to show up before the stealthily crept out. Now that stony devil spider had already stood upright and crept right behind Feng Hai. Its movements were extremely light without the slightest sound. Feng Hai had still yet to release. Death was right behind him. Since Long Chen wanted him to make a solemn oath, he shouted, I, Feng Hai, swear that if Long Chen gives me the antidote that cures my poison, I won't kill him. If I break my oath, let my intestines be pulled out, let lightning strike my down, and let me die without a burial. Seeing Long Chen just staring blankly at him, Feng Hai hastily demanded, Now it's fine, right? Hand over the antidote. Long Chen impatiently urged on the incredibly slow rocky devil spider inside. He couldn't drag this out forever. Cough, about that, that's still not good enough. Can't you make it more solemn and poisonous? You also know this is something that relates to my life. I need more reassurance, slowly said Long Chen. Bastard, are you still trying to stall for time till the poison erupts? Fine, then I'll just kill you right now and search on my own. Feng Hai furiously raised his long sword. Hey, fine. I'll hand over the antidote. Long Chen knew he couldn't delay any more. He threw over a jade bottle to him. The antidote is inside. It's made specifically to counter your poison. Take it. But your poison has infected you too deeply, and you've also consumed that poison-suppressing pill, causing even more poison to store itself in your blood. You'll need the matching antitoxin crystal to cure it. Long Chen then handed the silver centipede's crystal core to Feng Hai. When Feng Hai touched that crystal core, he immediately felt the poison in his body change. It no longer crazily attacked his organs, filling him with relief. At the very least he had found an antidote for his poison. This crystal core should be enough to save his life. He hastily consumed the medicinal pill Long Chen had given him as well. Although he was no alchemist, he had a definite skill in identifying medicinal pills. He knew this was definitely an antitoxin pill. Seeing that rocky devil spider continue moving like an elderly senior, Long Chen angrily cursed inside. Could it not speed up? But then when he saw its head slowly stretch out and it open its mouth, revealing 2 long poisonous fangs, he finally sighed in relief. Seeing that it was finally about to attack, Long Chen almost wept from joy. What kind of thing is this? Feng Hai eyed the fist-sized crystal core. Swallow in one gulp, sighed Long Chen. Tisich, how am I supposed to swallow this in one gulp? Are you asking me to choke to death? Raged Feng Hai. That crystal core was the size of a fist, and no matter how big a person's mouth was, it was impossible to swallow it. Even if you could fit it through your mouth, it wouldn't go down your throat. I wasn't talking to you, but to that thing behind you. Long Chen pointed pitifully behind him. Feng Hai's expression changed and he quickly turned around. But before he could, a sharp pain came from his back as a 3-meter-long fang pierced through his body. Chapter 205 10th Heaven Stage of Blood Condensation. A long fang stabbed through Feng Hai's body. He looked in disbelief at the end of that fang protruding out of his abdomen. He roared, slashing his long sword behind him with his full force. It went without saying that Feng Hai was incredibly powerful. A single slash of his broke apart the stony devil spider's fang, allowing him to escape. But then he was appalled when it then opened its mouth and shot a net of web that enveloped him. That net was dozens of meters long, and even Long Chen was caught in it. But since he had only been on the fringe and since he hastily dodged at the first moment, he just managed to get out. Ah! Feng Hai let out a mournful cry as he was tightly wrapped by that web. He was like a fish caught in a net, unable to escape. The stony devil spider then reeled in its web. In an instant, Feng Hai's legs were caught in its mouth. Intense pain and terror caused him to scream. Even Long Chen's hair stood on end when he saw this scene of him being eaten alive. Die, you damn brute! Feng Hai roared. Everything below his waist had already entered its mouth. With his last energy he slashed his long sword down on its head. Cliff-breaking strike. Terrifying sword chi directly sliced apart its head. He had managed to kill this third-rank magical beast in a single blow. But he hadn't managed to save himself. Half his body had disappeared into its body and his stomach had already been pierced by the stony devil spider's poisonous fang. He was already on his deathbed now. Long Chen sighed and walked up to him. Why did you bother with this? Why did you come to such a dangerous place to kill me? What was more important than your life? Feng Hai's vitality was rapidly fading. He knew he would definitely die. Why did I bother? Sigh, Long Chen, you've won. Long Chen shook his head. I didn't win. You just lost to your greed. After coughing painfully a couple times, Feng Hai's face became black as well. The poison had already spread throughout his entire body. Since I'm about to die, I'll tell you it was Elder's son who told me to come kill you. He wanted me to bring back your spatial ring and to seal your spirit in the soul-locking pearl. If you want revenge, go find him. Those were Feng Hai's final words. One of the senior disciple-level experts of the monastery, an excellent mid-muscle rebirth expert, had died miserably here. That really was regretful. Taking off Feng Hai's ring, he took out a fist-sized pearl. Looking at it, Long Chen's mood sunk. This was definitely a soul-locking pearl. It was an extremely sinister tool that could capture a person's soul. After sealing a person's soul into the pearl, you could use all kinds of methods to torture that person's soul. That person wouldn't even be able to die on his own. You old bastard, you really are vicious. You actually wanted to imprison my soul. You're definitely after the 9-star hegemon body art. Long Chen ground his teeth. As expected, his suspicions had been correct. No matter where you went, there would always be evil people. Feng Hai, although I didn't know you, I know you only said that so I'd go find Elder's son for revenge. Whether I die or Elder's son dies, you'd at least get revenge on one. Who would have thought you'd be so smart right before dying? But you've succeeded. Not long from now, I'll definitely send him to accompany you. I hope you train hard on the other side. Don't let that old bastard bully you once I send him your way. I actually hope you'll be able to bully that old bastard around in death for me. He also took Feng Hai's longsword. Although it wasn't a heavy weapon, it was made of excellent material. With just a single slash it had managed to break apart the stony devil spider's hard fang. It was definitely extremely sharp. Currently his flame blade wasn't strong enough. Using it to display Split the Heavens wouldn't be as good as using a real weapon. This sword would increase Split the Heavens' power even more. Of course, Long Chen was a thrifty person and also gathered the stony devil spider's essence blood as well. Unfortunately, it didn't possess much essence blood at all. After he finished gathering the essence blood, he looked at Feng Hai's corpse. Hesitating for a few moments, he still decided to dig a grave for him. No matter what, they were all from the same sect. Once a person died, the hatred and enmities relating to him also concluded. He didn't want to leave his corpse out in the wilderness. After gathering everything, Long Chen carefully returned back to his own encampment. 3 days later, Long Chen had fully recovered and began to crazily start hunting again. Now that Feng Hai had died, the crisis had temporarily passed. But Long Chen had seen just how great the difference was between him and his senior apprentice brothers. He was almost unable to withstand a single blow. Previously, when he had fought with Wu Qi, he had realized that his senior disciples were incredibly powerful. But he had still not thought that they had reached such a level. As a small squad leader of the law enforcers, Wu Qi's cultivation base should definitely be excellent even amongst his peers. After being punished by Elder Tu Feng, he had lost a great deal of prestige. Long Chen had no idea when he would come for him for revenge. So before he did that, he would have to increase his strength as much as possible. Otherwise he could only suffer. But of course, that inner will refuse to allow him to suffer loss like that. He could only rapidly increase his strength. So from that day onwards, Long Chen began to hunt magical beasts even faster. With that long sword, Long Chen could now kill mid-third rank magical beasts much easier. Furthermore, he had found an even more efficient method to kill them. First he would use his full force with Split the Heavens. As long as he shot one poison arrow into the wound formed by Split the Heavens, all he had to do was dance around until they died to the poison. He began to hunt magical beasts en masse. These magical beasts were all extremely tyrannical with low intelligence. As long as he didn't encounter any of them that were stronger than him, it was guaranteed he would be able to escape at least. With that kind of hunting method, Long Chen's efficiency went from 1 magical beast every 2 days to 2 magical beasts every day. 3 days later, Long Chen had absorbed 7 magical beasts' essence blood, allowing him to advance to the 9th heaven stage. After reaching the 9th heaven stage of blood condensation, Long Chen's strength grew even more. But unfortunately, without a heavy weapon, he was unable to truly bring out the full potential of his powerful body. Long Chen swore to himself that once he returned, he would definitely obtain a heavy weapon. Otherwise he really would be unable to properly use his strength, no matter how powerful he was. Now that he had reached the 9th heaven stage, Long Chen had the confidence to hunt even more and faster without needing to be so careful. As long as it wasn't a late 3rd rank magical beast, Long Chen would be able to defeat his opponent without a problem with his poison arrows. As time passed, the magical beasts around him gradually grew sparser. Long Chen had no choice but to increase his range. The rubble wasteland had ended up becoming a youth's hunting ground. Occasionally the roar of a magical beast would echo out. Time passed quickly. On this day, Long Chen had just finished absorbing essence blood when his blood began to surge. A whistling sound came from his body that could be heard clearly even from a mile away. Boom! A terrifying wave of qi shot out along with an intense pressure. The current Long Chen really did look like a divinity disdainfully looking down on all. Haha, I've finally reached the muscle rebirth realm. Long Chen laughed crazily atop a huge boulder. Feeling the surging power within his body, he had an urge to tear apart heaven and earth. Oh, wait a sec. I haven't reached muscle rebirth yet. My muscles haven't changed at all and they aren't being nourished at all. Long Chen suddenly realized something was off. He realized his blood had once more returned to its depleted state. That was the situation that would occur every time he advanced heaven stages. Each time he advanced, his body's blood vessels would widen slightly, increasing his blood capacity. So once the vessels were enlarged, even though he didn't lose any blood, he would not be at his max capacity any longer. That would occur every time he purified his blood and advanced. But this was the 10th time now. In other words, normally he should have reached the muscle rebirth realm. But seeing what was going on, his heart began to pound. Could it be the 9-star Hegemon Body Art's blood condensation realm also has 13 levels? Long Chun couldn't help being stupefied. In order to advance out of the 9th heaven stage, he had killed a total of 37 third-rank magical beasts. Only then had he gathered enough essence blood. He had basically killed all the magical beasts he could within a range of hundreds of miles. Then according to the 9-star Hegemon Body Art's increase in difficulty, wouldn't he need to kill 73rd rank magical beasts to reach the 11th heaven stage? Then the 12th heaven stage would require 140 magical beasts, and the 13th heaven stage would require 280. Counting on his fingers, Long Chen's excitement rapidly deflated. He would need to kill at least 500 third-rank magical beasts before being able to reach the muscle rebirth realm. 500? Those weren't 500 hogs for the slaughter. Wasn't this just a joke? The level of difficulty for a blood condensation rookie to kill 500 third-rank magical beasts was essentially impossible. He would need to hunt forever to do that. Long Chen angrily cursed. He had no spirit blood, spirit bone, or spirit root, so the 9-star Hegemon Body Art was his only option. After cursing for a while, he had no choice but to accept his fate. Oh wait, my blood has changed color? There's a bit of gold to it now. Long Chen suddenly paused. When he had examined his inner body, he saw that specks of gold had appeared in his blood, looking like golden sand. This 9-star Hegemon Body Art really is strange. But might as well keep hunting. Cursing and cursing, Long Chen once more began to explore. But when he killed another third-rank magical beast and began to absorb its essence blood, he found that the energy from that essence blood almost had no effect on him. What's going on? After absorbing that energy, all that had happened was that the golden sand within his blood had increased ever so slightly. The effect was very low, almost imperceptible. Damn, this time I'm screwed. Perhaps to advance I'll need 4th-rank magical beast essence blood. Long Chen's heart grew cold. According to the normal increase in difficulty of the 9-star Hegemon Body Art, his hypothesis was most likely correct. Magical beasts below the mid-3rd rank were probably almost useless to him now. At the very least he would need to kill late 3rd rank magical beasts. But most likely only 4th rank magical beast essence blood would really let his cultivation base explosively grow again. But 4th rank magical beasts? Long Chen could only laugh at that. He didn't want to become a snack for a magical beast. Okay, whatever. I've already been away for a month. It's time to return. Although I haven't broken through to the muscle rebirth realm, with my current power, it should be enough to handle them. Long Chen stood atop a tall boulder and looked towards the south. That was the direction of the monastery. It was time to return home. Chapter 206 Long Chen returns. Within the Xiantian Monastery, the 3rd faction competition was about to begin. During the 1st faction competition, Tang Wan'er and Yi Zhiqiu's factions had been betrayed, causing them to have 0 flags at the end, ranking them last. Then Long Chen had furiously killed those traitors and had been exiled to the rubble wasteland. The chances of him returning alive were extremely slim. After all, that was the graveyard of the exiled. Ever since the monastery had been established, there had not been a single core disciple who had managed to walk out of the wasteland alive. Furthermore, all those exiled core disciples had already broken through to the muscle rebirth realm, while Long Chen had only been at the 7th heaven stage of blood condensation. So the chances of him surviving were incredibly remote. Long Chen's departure had been a large blow to Tang Wan'er and Yi Ziqi's morale. But they were comforted by the fact that even after such a huge setback, there was not a single person who left their faction. After consuming the medicinal pills Long Chen had left for them, their faction's cultivation bases once more explosively grew. Even without the support of many points, they weren't at all inferior to others. Whenever they went to the mission distribution building, they were only been able to receive a couple garbage missions. Furthermore, they were unable to obtain even those trash missions on every day. The majority of the missions had already been taken by the other factions. There was zero chance of them obtaining a high-level mission with more rewards. The most infuriating part was that whenever they went to go accept missions, they were often provoked, ridiculed, and abused by the other factions. That had caused Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu to be endlessly infuriated. Even just receiving the most lowest-level missions brought other people's provocations onto them. If they were then unable to accomplish those missions, not only would they not get any points, but they would also be intolerably bullied. Once the first faction competition had ended and Long Chen had been exiled, all the factions in the monastery had formed 3 alliances. One was the alliance led by Gu Yang. They had a total of 7 factions, and they were the absolute strongest. Then there was another alliance headed by Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu. They had a total of 5 factions. Other than Song Mingyuan and Li Qi, the 5th person to bring their faction to support them was Luo Tsong. That was the first stranger who had expressed his support of Long Chen. There had been others who had stood next to him to express their support for him back then. However, once he had been expelled, they had all maintained their silence, some even furtively joining Gu Yang's alliance. That was definitely infuriating, but Tang Wanhe was also helpless. She had seen the cruelness of reality. Of the 7 factions that had stood up for Long Chen, only Song Mingyuan, Li Qi, and Luo Tsong had truly been in support of Long Chen and would have left with him. The other 4 had clearly just been awed by Long Chen's terrifying strength and wanted to get closer to him. Those 4 were not idiots. Although Gu Yang was powerful, there was no way he would be able to resist both Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu. Most importantly, within their factions was Long Chen with his limitless potential. Even at the 7th heaven stage of blood condensation, he was able to just barely fight off against muscle rebirth core disciples. That displayed his potential to everyone. So back then they had thought that with everyone supporting him, they would definitely be able to save Long Chen. That way, not only would they embody justice, they would also be able to get a powerful companion. But later the sect leader had appeared and exiled Long Chen to the rubble wasteland, stupefying them. In their eyes, Long Chen was already definitely dead. They had had no choice but to rethink their alliance. Some of them had barely hesitated to throw themselves to Gu Yang, subserviently joining his faction. Other than Gu Yang and Tang Wan'er's alliance, there was also Neutral Alliance. That alliance was led by Guan Wennen. He was the 4th core disciple who had revived his ancestral mark. His combat power was incredibly powerful and he was extremely arrogant. But in front of 3 others who had also awakened their ancestral marks, he couldn't help being nervous. That was especially true when it came to Gu Yang. He had already awakened his ancestral mark before joining the monastery, so his strength was definitely the greatest of everyone. With Gu Yang and Tang Wan'er taking opposing sides, he had smartly chosen to be neutral. He didn't curry favor to Gu Yang, but he also didn't strike Tang Wan while she was down. He led 4 factions to do their own things. They wouldn't offend either of the 2 other alliances. 1 month later, while Long Chen had been killing 3rd-rank magical beasts in the rubble wasteland, the 2nd faction competition had begun. This time the competition was even more intense than the first time. After all the flags had been collected, Gu Yang and Tang Wan'er's alliance began a fierce fight. Seeing their hated enemies, both parties' eyes turned red and fought with their full strength to snatch the other party's flag. But what caused everyone to turn pale with fright was that when Gu Yang's full strength exploded and all the runes on his body lit up, he was able to fight off against both Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu on his own. Only then had everyone realized that Gu Yang really was too powerful, worthy of being someone who had revived his ancestral mark long before. He was already completely familiar on how to use his runic power. But as for Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu, they had only awakened their ancestral marks for 2 months. They were completely unable of wielding the full power of their ancestral mark. The two of them had fought with their full strength, but they had been unable to defeat him. The alliances were originally 5 factions against 7. That was a definite disparity, and furthermore Gu Yang had fended off 2 of their strongest experts on his own. They had immediately lost. When the bell had rang, Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu's flags had all been completely stolen. There was no way around it. The two of them were separated by far too great of a disparity. 2 enemy core disciples had directly charged through Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu's ranks. Those inner and outer disciples were completely unable to stop them. The most regrettable thing of all was that they had not only had all their flags stolen, they had even cruelly injured the disciples who dared resist them, crushing their bones and snapping their muscles. There were only a few people in their factions who were still able to crawl after the bell rang. The others all lay on the ground, too severely injured to move. Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu had been infuriated to see that scene of their disciples lying there wounded. Tears of anger had streamed down their faces. They cursed their own helplessness. But they were also powerless to change it. At the same time, they also realized just how cruel the struggle in the monastery was. During the faction competition, you could do anything other than killing someone. And so Qi Xin and Lei Qianshang had struck especially viciously, all in order to break their disciples' confidence. They wanted them to feel fear and to surrender completely. Furthermore, Qi Xin and them had done it extremely slyly. He purposely targeted those people on Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu's side. As for Song Mingyuan and them, although they desperately wanted to save them, their own strength was unable to push back their own enemies. They could only watch as they were humiliated. That kind of helplessness was incredibly infuriating, enough for them to want to kill them. But they also didn't have Long Chen's guts to kill people. Their anger could only smolder inside them. They all realized a certain possibility that this was all part of Qi Xin's scheme. Although all 5 of their factions had joined into an alliance, they only targeted Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu's factions. One reason was because they wanted to leave some leeway. They didn't want to completely offend their 3 factions. And it also was a kind warning. But more importantly, it was to incite disharmony between their factions. Although they wanted to help, they were powerless to. In the end, Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu's people were all beaten to the ground, their flags stolen. But as for their 3 factions, they were basically unharmed. Although they didn't have many flags, their flags at least hadn't been snatched away. This was to sow seeds of discord between them. The people under those 3 factions saw that scene, and so they didn't fight with their full force. They didn't actually want to help and be beat like that. And it was because of that that over the next few days, their outer disciples had begun to voice their objections to their alliance. But after a strict oppression by the core disciples, they once more calmed down. However, the seed of discord had already been planted. If they didn't resolve it, sooner or later it would rupture. At this time, the sun had just risen from the east. Its warm rays covered the land. But that warm sunlight was unable to change the explosive atmosphere on the battlefield. This was the battlefield of the faction competition. The flags had already been scattered throughout. 17 factions had gathered here. Today was the day of the 3rd faction competition. The atmosphere was extremely tense. Tang Wan'er and Yijiqiu knew that if they were last again, they really would be done for. After Long Chen had led, he had used their faction points to buy medicinal ingredients and had refined for 3 days and nights all so that everyone wouldn't fall too far behind. That had also been to lay some foundation for the 2nd faction competition. But after Gu Yang had taken 1st place, he had received a huge amount of points. Not only had he bought medicinal pills, he had also gotten some treasures that could assist their cultivation. Their power had sharply risen. And so even though Long Chen had left that assistance, they had not obtained any superiority. It was obvious how beneficial the rewards for 1st place were. The top 3 places were occupied by Gu Yang, Qi Xin, and Lei Qiansheng. Last time they had shaken them off. Now this time the distance had only grown. Tang Wan'er, how are you? Have you thought it over? If you join me, your situation will immediately improve. Otherwise you'll forever be last. Gu Yang arrogantly looked at Tangwan. Keep dreaming. Tangwan truly loathed him now. Gu Yang didn't care and just laughed. Are you still thinking about that pretty Bao? Ha, it's been 2 months but he still hasn't returned. That means he's long since been turned into magical beast dung. Gu Yang, this time I won't let you get your way. Tangwan clenched her teeth. Gu Yang sneered, up to you, but I think that once you've been last for 3 consecutive times, you'll forever be on the bottom. Looking at the arrogant Gu Yang, Tangwan took a deep breath and turned to Yi Zhiqiu. Sister Zhiqiu, if we fail again, I'll go kill them. Yi Zhiqiu nodded. An icy intent surfaced in her eyes. I'll go with you. We'll kill these bastards as revenge. In these 2 months, there hadn't been the slightest news from Long Chen. That was no good sign. The two of them were incomparably aggrieved and furious. This time they finally ended up feeling killing intent for Gu Yang and them. Fighting and killing people were 2 different concepts. Fighting was based on who was stronger. But killing was based on who was more vicious, who didn't fear death. Now that Long Chen had died, Tangwan's heart felt as if it was being stabbed by needles. She hated those bastards in front of her. She would definitely bring them down with her. Everyone prepare. This faction competition begins dash. Wait, sorry I'm late. Suddenly a voice cut off senior apprentice Brother Wan's announcement. People turned with astonishment to see a figure walking over from the direction of the rising sun. Chapter 207 On the verge of a huge battle. Hearing that voice, everyone was completely silent. They all slowly turned to look in the direction of that voice. A figure walked slowly walking over to everyone. The morning sun illuminated his back, its golden rays filling the entire sky. The sun shined on his back, making it so they couldn't see his face. On his shoulder was a bone blade that was even longer than his body. Just like that, he walked over to everyone. When that person appeared, an intense scent of blood blew over, causing everyone's hearts to tremble. A profound terror came from their spirits. Long Chen. When that person finally walked close enough, people finally managed to see his face. He had sword-like eyebrows and a hawk nose. He had a light stubble on his face that gave his face a bit of a rugged look. If it wasn't Long Chen, then who could it possibly be? Long Chen had really returned? No one could believe their eyes. Long Chen had returned alive from the place known as the Graveyard of the Exiled. Long Chen was wearing a set of golden leather armor that was dazzling under the sunlight. But as he got closer, people saw that it was actually an extremely crudely manufactured snakeskin robe. When they saw those golden scales, they were absolutely shocked. That was the skin of the golden horned python. That was an extremely powerful existence amongst third-rank magical beasts. Its snakeskin was famed for its defensive strength. But Long Chen was now using it as clothing. Then looking at the huge blade on his shoulder, they saw it wasn't a real blade, but a sawed-down tooth. That tooth was 3 meters long, its entire body completely jade white. There were actually some natural decorative patterns on the bone blade. Not one person present was able to see through the origins of those decorative patterns, but there were 2 people in the distance who had. Tu Feng sighed as he watched from a distance. He really is a legendary existence. He actually managed to return from a path of sure death. Furthermore, he only needed a short 2 months. That really is shocking. But most shocking of all is that bloody aura on his body. That's something formed from the grievance of powerful magical beasts. I really don't know how many of them he killed to condense such a terrifying murderous aura. And that golden horned python skin is frightening enough on its own, but he actually has a tooth from a 4th-rank dragon blood saber-toothed tiger. I really can't understand him. Originally he had thought Long Chen would require at least half a year to return. That was because there were countless 3rd-rank magical beasts on the way back, and even 4th-rank magical beasts might appear. He would have to travel extremely carefully every day. Ling Yunzi stared at that domineering figure and smiled. This fellow really does have some tricks. He was actually able to kill a golden horned snake. But I'm certain he didn't do that with force. He must have used some sort of stratagem. And that bone blade isn't all that rare. It's just a tooth that fell out a long time ago. He probably just found it. It releases a pressure belonging to a 4th-rank magical beast. Although it's very faint, magical beasts are extremely sensitive to that kind of pressure. That's probably why Long Chen was able to return to the monasteries so quickly. Only then did Tu Feng realize that Bone Blade possessed a pressure belonging to a 4th-rank magical beast. When other magical beasts sensed that pressure, they would quickly flee. It was no wonder Long Chen could return too quickly. Long Chen's aura is extremely strange. It seems like the peak of blood condensation, yet also not the peak. His blood has yet to reach complete saturation. Tu Feng was surprised when he sensed Long Chen's cultivation base. Yes, it really is strange. But I believe there will be a pretty good play to watch now. Come, drink and have some tea. Ling Yunzi handed him a cup of tea and smiled. He was finding his own life had become more and more brilliant ever since Long Chen had appeared. When Long Chen finally arrived in front of everyone, Tang Wana was unable to restrain herself any longer and began to cry. Long Chen, not caring about everyone's gazes, she hugged Long Chen and cried. She didn't know when, but at some time, Long Chen had occupied an irreplaceable part of her heart. Hey, so many people are watching. Long Chen laughed, his heart extremely emotionally moved. Normally the two of them would quibble and bicker. But once he had left, she had realized how important he was to her. You scoundrel! Tang Wana lightly rapped Long Chen a couple times, and then wiped away her tears with embarrassment, her face red. At this time Yi Zhiqiu also walked over. Although her expression was still icy, there was some warmth in her eyes. How about we have a group hug? I can't favor just one person, laughed Long Chen. Yi Zhiqiu looked at his raised arms and merely said, Congratulations on returning alive. Fine, I guess Yi Zhiqiu still hasn't learned how to be humorous. Long Chen could only awkwardly put down his arms. Brother Long, we all knew you would return alive. At this time Song Mingyuan, Li Qi, and Luo Tsang also all walked over. The three of them were delighted that Long Chen had returned. So what if you've returned alive? Isn't that just some dog's hit luck? What can a trash who is still just in the blood condensation realm possibly do? Qi Xen icily sneered at them disdainfully. Song Mingyuan and them were angered. Long Chen turned to Qi Xen and smiled slightly. Your mouth really is as loathsome as ever. This time I've gained much from my exile. In a bit I'll have to properly thank you for everything. Although Long Chen was smiling, his eyes were completely icy. With that bloody aura on his body, he really was like a death god, causing people's heart to turn cold. You're just at the peak of blood condensation. Don't act like you're some genius. I've already said that if you dare block my path again, I'll ruthlessly smash you into pulp. Gu Yang snorted disdainfully and pointed his fist at Long Chen. Long Chen then lazily looked at Elder Sun who was above. Elder Sun, you seem so shocked to see me return alive. How come your face is so green? Elder Sun truly was shocked. He couldn't even believe his eyes. Feng Hai failed? That's impossible, absolutely impossible. Feng Hai is at the top of the mid-muscle rebirth realm. There's no way he couldn't kill Long Chen. For Long Chen to return but him not to, there must have been some sort of accident. Most likely he encountered a powerful 4th-rank magical beast and was killed. Elder Sun had been extremely puzzled, but after he thought about it for a while he calmed down. He was certain that if Feng Hai had encountered Long Chen, he would have definitely died. And so since Feng Hai hadn't encountered Long Chen, that meant the matter of him sending someone to kill Long Chen wouldn't be exposed. But seeing that ridiculing smile on Long Chen's face, his heart began to pound. He once more began to wonder if he was wrong. That was because Long Chen's gaze was filled with endless ridicule and disdain. He was now uncertain whether or not Long Chen had seen Feng Hai. If the monastery were to learn he had sent someone to kill Long Chen, then he would definitely die a miserable death under the monastery's strict rules. What? Elder Sun, How come your face is now turning blue? Are you trying to show us your remarkable skills in changing face color? How could Longchen not see through Elder Sun's thinking? But he also didn't say anything about it at this time. That was because he had no proof that Feng Hai had been sent by Elder Sun. So he was unable to bring down Elder Sun. And if he said anything, that would alarm him and put him on guard. Longchen was someone who remembered his enmities. He would never forgive someone who had schemed to kill him. How presumptuous! How dare you disrespect your elders? Elder Sun furiously shouted. No matter what the situation was, he was still an extremely prestigious elder of the monastery. Being jeered at by a disciple naturally infuriated him. How did I disrespect my elders? I just said that elder's face is changing color. That's not disrespect. Longchen lightly smiled. He knew Elder Sun was trying to cover up his shock. Just keep putting on that play, you old bastard. When you finally can't keep acting, we'll settle our debt. Senior apprentice brother Wan hastily opened his mouth when he saw Elder Sun's expression turn dark. Longchen, since you're returned, hurry up and return to your faction. The faction competition is about to start. Longchen nodded to senior apprentice brother Wan. He actually respected this steady senior apprentice brother of his much more. He whispered to Tang Wana, "How's the current situation?" At this point Tang Wana had recovered from her shock. She quickly gave him a rundown of what had happened and their current situation, emphasizing how powerful Gu Yang was. Hee boss, now that I've returned, you can finally carry me. Only now did Guoran have a chance to say something to Longchen. Don't worry, this time won't be the same as last time. You won't need to run away. Just sit there. They'll kneel down and hand their flags to you, smiled Longchen. Before Guoran could reply, senior apprentice brother Wan had already lit the incense stick. Longchen gave Tang Wan an instruction to grab the flags just like they had the first time. Dong! The bell rang out, and all the core disciples rushed out, grabbing as many flags as they could. But Longchen saw that everyone was much faster than before. In just a couple breaths, all the flags had been taken. It appeared they had learned greatly from their experience. These people were already used to this kind of competition. Longchen had only managed to get 5 flags before there were none left on the ground. Once all the flags disappeared, there was immediately a group that rushed to the edge. That was Guan Wenan's neutral alliance. He would only watch. But this time he fled further away than before, obviously afraid of being drawn into their fight. Yijiqiu, Song Mingyuan, Li Qi, and Luo Tsang all drew closer to Tang Wana. They formed up into a battle formation extremely smoothly and quickly. They had only just set up their formations when Gu Yang charged over with a heaven-shaking roar. Guoran, called out Longchen. Yes, boss. Remember, when they come to give you flags in a bit, if they aren't kneeling on the ground, we won't accept them. Do you understand? Longchen then charged out with his bone blade. Following Longchen, Tang Wana, Yijiqiu, and the others all rushed out as well. A huge battle was about to commence. That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.